Hello, 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 my beautiful blossoms, blooms, and buds. Welcome. I'm Rosebud Read, and welcome to my book garden. Actually, welcome to my basement. But I got books. I've got, well, some flowers. It works. Anyway, welcome. I hope you all are doing well. Oh, hi, Chi Kiki, and hello, Peacock Pages. So excited to be here for a full stream. Hubby finished his grad program and offered to take on nighttime routine for a little human so I can finally be here. Oh, that's wonderful. Congratulations to your husband and welcome. I'm glad you're here. I'm just finishing getting set up, so I'm going to make sure I turn off my alarm, because if I don't, people will text continuously. I think I'm pretty much centered. I was running a little behind today, but we are pretty much good to go. Life-wise, I did end up getting my little mushroom tattoo done. It's on my ankle, so I'm like not gonna lift up my leg to be like, here it is, but I'll show you a picture. It's looking really good. So here it is. I'm trying to get it to focus. Maybe if I put it over my face. There we go. My artist, this is the apprentice at the shop that I've been going to for the dragon, and I'll go tomorrow for my kitsune. And they are doing an amazing job, and I cannot wait. So on Thursday, you'll get to see my kitsune, and it will be amazing. It's the same artist that did my dragon is going to do my Weiwuxian kitsune. So I'm super excited about that. But anyway, for those in the US, I hope everyone had a wonderful Memorial Day. I ended up barbecuing for some friends and their families, and that was really nice. I haven't seen them for a while. It was good. Sorry, my book stand is like fighting me right now for some reason. That's probably not the nicest thing to hear in the microphone. You saw Tuck of Fire? That's kind of cool. Is that in theaters or? Sounds cool, whatever it is. Anything with fire sounds amazing. But yeah, just low-key, good time. Burgers, hot dogs. Initially it was going, oh, Truck of Fire. Ooh, I hope everyone was okay. Like that sounds exciting. Truck on Fire. Ooh. Hopefully everyone was okay. I mean, it sounds cool to watch, but also like it could get dangerous very quickly. But yeah, I'm trying to think. Oh, last thing, and then we'll get started. It was down the street. They put it out very quickly. Yeah, someone partying too hard in Memorial Day. I agree, Peacock Pages. I don't know how many other people have been swept away by the craze, but my niece has been going crazy for these little Labubus. This is actually, I found out, a Lafufu, which is the knockoff brand, because the other ones like don't exist unless you have like a secret code at a certain time within the first 5 seconds, which I wish I was joking. I found someone who actually buys this through my tattoo artist, because I was like, oh, that thing, my niece is going crazy for it. And they were like, oh, you mean the Lafufu or the Labubu? And it is the craze that is sweeping the nation. They're like Beanie Babies were. But yeah, this is the only one that I think is vaguely cute. Yeah. You know about them, Chichi Kiki, and coworker has one, and my 4-year-old saw and is hell bent on me getting one. I recommend, since they're 4 years old and might not know the difference between the Lafufu and the Labubu. Lafufu is the one, yeah, it's gonna have to be a Lafufu. Because those ones are the ones that are not $50 on Amazon, if they're real. The way you can tell the difference is apparently this one's filled in, like invisible on the Lafufus, and apparently it's like ultraviolet on the Labubus. Which is probably more than you ever needed to know about Lafufu Labubu. But yeah, my niece is gonna be very excited. She better be very excited. But yeah. That's the fun nerd rant culture of the day. And now we get to start. Good Auntie. I try. They're good kids. They deserve it. Okay. So, where we were before, it sounds like we had a little hint of rebellion about to be discussed with oh goodness, Yun Yu was basically inviting him to a rebellion meeting with some of the other tumors. So we start chapter 3. The next day, I went to the palace to tell the emperor and the empress dowager what arrangements I had made for the princess. I had meant to see Chizi first, but a young eunuch told me that His Majesty was attending to official business in the imperial study, so I turned aside and went to see the Empress Dowager. When the Empress Dowager had heard out my arrangements for the princess, she said nothing. After a long moment, with her eyes half closed, she said, "Alas, when I arranged your marriage, I thought that as Liu was an upright man, his daughter was sure to have been carefully brought up, that she would be a well-bred girl of good moral character. Wang Qin and Yun Tang both came to me at the time and also requested that their daughters be betrothed to you. I considered these 3 young women. Wang Qin's daughter is an upright, well-bred girl, but she isn't as attractive as Li Yu's daughter. With your looks, Prince Huai, only a beauty, would suit you. Yun Tang's daughter is attractive, but I've heard that her temper isn't very good, and neither was the princess. Little Yun Yu has such a sharp tongue, yet at home even he goes in fear of his big sister. Good. Moreover, Yun Tang is His Majesty's grand tutor and might be said to belong to your generation. If his daughter were to marry you, that would be mixing the generations. So upon consideration, I selected Li Yu's daughter. Who could have ever thought it would turn out like this? It's all my fault. I bet he's about to deny that. Sitting in the position of lower precedence, I smiled obesquely. How could it be your fault? Most of the blame for the princess's conduct lies with me. The Empress Dowager opened her eyes wide. Nonsense! How could it be your fault? Hadn't the princess already started her relationship with this guard before leaving her parents' home? Li Yu was a loyal minister of the court. How could he have had so badly mismanaged his own household and let his daughter carry on like this? Lord Li was busy with affairs of state, I said. He can be excused for overlooking matters at home. Moreover, prior to our marriage, the princess had lived a sheltered life with her parents. To speak coarsely, what young girl doesn't long for romance? She was young and ignorant then. She had read poems about talented scholars and fair ladies. She saw a young man, and she gave him her heart in secret. This is a common occurrence. I am certain that nothing ever really happened between them at the time. When she was married, she might have forgotten about it, but instead, after our marriage, I bowed my head and sighed. It is because I deserted her. So I don't blame her too much. The Empress Dowager produced a handkerchief and dabbed the corners of her eyes. Prince Huai, it makes me sick at heart to hear you speak like this. It was your bad luck. Your heart is open and your mind is broad. You are so considerate even in your treatment of women. So why has it come to this? What of this? I shall arrange another marriage for you. I'll be sure to choose you a good match. I have a younger cousin who, like you, is young but belongs to an older generation. She's 17 this year and has yet to be betrothed. Pause. How old is our dude? Because I know it's a different time. I so know it's a different time. But please tell me he's not that much older. I mean, 17 is on the cusp, but it's... I've watched this child grow up. She's well behaved and clever, only a little shy. Her zodiac animal also goes well with yours. Why don't I have a portrait brought to Hawaii Manor tomorrow so you can have a look? I sighed inwardly. Truly, the Empress Dowager's wariness of me hadn't slackened one iota. During the years I had been married to the princess, 2 or 3 times a month she had been brought to the palace by the Empress Dowager for a talk. Now that the princess had just entered a convent, she wanted to give me her cousin instead. Yeah, oof, I agree, Peacock Pages. After a deliberate silence, I said, if your cousin were willing to marry me, it would be the blessing of 3 lifetimes. But there are those unspeakable tendencies of mine, as you know. It would be nothing but a waste for any young lady to marry me. Why don't they just give him a dude? Like, do they have a cousin? Like, no, like, not, maybe not family. I didn't think before saying that. But, like, you keep trying to give him a wife. Like, you clearly don't trust the guy already. Like, we're going back to Golden Terrace. Like, the dude's giving you an out right now. Like, I like guys. Like, I'm trying to be good to this lady, not make her come into a place where she probably won't appreciate it. Like, I'm got my own preferences. Like, I'm not going to treat her terribly, but, like, I'm just saying, like, maybe I was spoiled because of Golden Terrace, but I'm like, we could come to a better consensus if you really want to spy in that household. Like, it's not going to be pretty still, but, like, might be a little more amiable. I think your hobby is only the slight wariness of a romantic youth, the Empress Dowager persisted. Oh, you're not gay. You just haven't met the right person. Oh, honey. When the healthy relationship in Golden Terrace is considered being spoiled. Yeah, you have a point. You have nothing to worry about. My cousin is dutiful and gentle. She won't get jealous. Whatever romances you may have on the outside, you need to have a woman at home. A woman at home to support you and help you run the household. There are some things that only a woman can do. You are an only son, Prince Huai, and you are getting on in years. You ought to be thinking of the next generation. He kind of was. He was like, I kind of don't want to produce a child because they're just going to come into the situation I did, which is distrust by the Empire. So, like, he kind of is. This little scheme of the Empress Dowager's really was a triumph. She would marry her cousin off to me, and her cousin would watch me day and night and bear my children, and in the future, the Empress Dowager's family would even have a share in my family's inheritance. Okay. Now I see a little bit of it. All right, I said. As you are willing to undertake the task, I will ask it of you. The Empress Dowager's greatest strength was her perseverance. If I kept sidestepping, she would keep chipping away, giving me no peace. I might as well fob her off by agreeing than worry about it later. I love how he's got kind of like Well, fine. Marriage. As expected, once I said this, the Empress Dowager's expression cleared. She told me a lot more about her cousin, about another half of Shichen later, which is about 2 hours. I finally made my escape and withdrew. When I came to the Imperial study again, Chizzy had concluded his business, and a eunuch brought me inside. Upon seeing me, the first thing Chiji said was, "You truly are swift and decisive, Imperial Uncle. You had the whole thing settled yesterday morning." I smiled bitterly. There was hardly anything to settle. It just needed to be dealt with quietly with some consideration given to appearances. The Empress Dowager is truly attentive. Just now she wanted to arrange another marriage and betroth one of your Majesty's cousin aunts to me. Chizzy's expression stilled. Then he asked, "Did you agree?" I evaded, saying that my bad habit couldn't be changed and it would be a waste of the young lady's time. But the Empress Dowager's kindness is difficult to refuse, so I... Chizzy tilted his head as he looked at me. The corners of his mouth tipped up slightly. "So you have come to lodge a complaint against our mother. You want us to help you get out of it?" There was some meaning hidden in the corners of his mouth. "You must be relieved now that the princess has gone to a convent." I remained silent. Chizzy walked behind his desk and sat in his chair. He took a brush from the brush pot and toyed with it. "We can say something to our mother, but how are you going to thank us?" I bowed and said, "Your Majesty is understanding. The imperial grace is vast. I am moved to tears of gratitude." The shaft of the brush in Chizzy's hand gently touched his chin. "Just that? How stingy of you." Hard-pressed, I said. "But it is not as though I can casually invite your Majesty to dinner. I'm all but facing financial ruin from how much of my money Chitan has borrowed lately. I have nothing worth offering your Majesty." Twirling the brush, Chizzy said, "At your house the other day, I saw a peach stone carved with a banquet of 8 immortals, a most fascinating object." Goodness, my nephew the Emperor had sharp eyes. That night in the front hall, he had been surrounded by eunuchs and attendants, yet he had still seen something so minuscule. So, a little side note. The 8 immortals are Taoist deities, each of whom has a distinctive divine power and motif. Popular imagery depicts them crossing the sea or attending the Queen Mother of the West's birthday feast, where they eat peaches of immortality. Your Majesty's eyesight is excellent. I could not obtain such a fine object myself. It was a gift. "Oh, you cannot part with it, Imperial Uncle," said Chizzy. "Could it be that it was a gift from a lover?" I'd known when I heard the words Imperial Uncle that this would go badly. I quickly said, "How could that be? I will go home today and have it packed up and sent to the palace to be presented to your Majesty." Chizzy smiled in satisfaction. After a little while, I asked for leave to withdraw. I had already turned around when I heard Chizzy speak behind me. "Chengjun." I looked back. Chizzy was leaning back in his chair, looking at me. "Don't worry. We will make certain that no new princess crosses your threshold." I bowed again. "Thank you, Your Majesty." Dude's really getting taken to the laundry with, one, nephew taking all his money, and now the prince is even asking for, one of the few things he actually seems to have of value. I kind of feel bad for the guy. Upon leaving the imperial study, I walked slowly along the path. For some reason, when Chizzy had called me Chengjun, it had given me a peculiar sensation. I remember the first time Chizzy called me by my courtesy name. It was the day his reign formally began, and also his 15th birthday. I had come to the palace with a jade scepter to congratulate him. As the occasion was a formal one, I performed full obeisance and prostrated myself. I'm going to fight with that word the whole time. It was then that I heard Chizzy say, "Rise, Chengjun." All the ministers were gathered in the great hall. When he said this, an absolute hush fell over the hall. I raised my head slightly, stunned. After a moment of quiet, the Empress Dowager, sitting beside him, stood and said, "How can your Majesty address Prince Huai like this? He is your Majesty's Imperial Uncle. It's improper to call an elder by name." Chizzy pressed his lips together in silence. His clear, bright eyes were focused on me. "The Empress Dowager overstates the matter," I quickly said, with a smile. "It is a form of affectionate favor for His Majesty to address me in this way. While I am His Majesty's uncle, before that I am His Majesty's subject. Indeed, I must express my gratitude that His Majesty is willing to address me by name." I touched my head to the ground again. "Thank you, Your Majesty." When I rose, I saw that Chizzy was still looking at me, but now there was a trace of a smile on his lips. From that day forward, Chizzy's form of address towards me became confused. He called me Imperial Uncle, Prince Huai, or Chengjun, according to his whims. I wasn't strongly attached to any form of address, and anyway, he was the Emperor. I had no choice but to go along with his moods. Fair point. It was also from then on that Chizzy seemed to become a different person. Before, he had been a taciturn child, even a little frail. After taking up the reins of power, he altered day by day, as if undergoing a complete transformation. Chizzy had been appointed crown prince at birth. His upbringing had been different from the late emperor's other sons, and he had seldom left the palace. In his generation of princes and princes' sons, he had originally been the most distant from me, until one particular year. I remember that he looked to be about 9 or 10. The late emperor was still alive then, and so was my mother. She was celebrating her birthday that day, shortly after the new year. Chitan, Chi Fei, and the other princes had come with their consort mothers to play at Huai Manor. Chi Li, Chi Qian, and other princes' sons, as well as Yun Yu, Wang Xuan, and the other sons of important courtiers, had also come with the grown-ups. The Empress made an unexpected appearance as well, and even brought the crown prince, Chizzy. My mother hardly had time to greet all the distinguished guests who had come for her birthday. Children don't like to attend banquets. They rushed out into the back garden to play. A dusting of snow was still falling as a whole pasel of children ran around in the snow and rolled snowballs. The attendants were on tetherhooks. Only Chizzy sat on the veranda, wrapped in a fur coat, as he watched the others play. Because he was crown prince and would one day be emperor, the whole crowd of children, having received instructions from the adults, didn't dare to play with him in such a carefree manner. What if they shoved or yanked the future emperor in their roughhousing? He might remember it when he inherited the throne. Kind of feel bad for him. So Chizzy could only sit there. His hand warmer, cushion and backrest, and even teacup had all been brought from the palace. A crowd of young and old eunuchs stood by to attend him. He sat there not moving a muscle, like a puppet child. I also stood on the veranda, keeping an eye on the children to ensure they didn't trip and fall. If anything happened, I went to help. As I stood watch, I saw an old eunuch offer tea to the little crown prince with a little velvet handkerchief under the cup. The crown prince put his hand warmer on his knee and solemnly raised his little hands to take the teacup. He took tiny sips. The sight made me want to laugh. Perhaps Chizzy noticed me looking at him. He turned his bright black eyes on me, then immediately lowered his lashes and turned his head away. I thought to myself, The Empress has raised this prince to be fussier than a little princess. Comparing him to my other nephews as they ran around the courtyard like wild rabbits was enough to send anyone into a dither. As I thought this, Chizzy once more turned his head to look at me. When I looked at him, he responded again by turning his head away immediately. Perhaps the child was shy and felt awkward. I was just thinking I might coax a few words out of him when in the courtyard Chitan, Chili, and the other children shouted, "Uncle June! Uncle June!" I trotted over. Chitan pointed at a plum blossom tree and said, "Uncle June, I want a flower." Oh, Chitan, you always want what your uncle's got. I reached up to pick one, but Chitan tugged on my robe and said, "I want to pick it myself." So I held him up so he could pick the plum blossom himself. Once Chitan was back on the ground, Chi Fei, Chi Li, and the other gathered around my knees, clamoring that they wanted flowers too. I held each of them up in turn until the plum blossom tree was half bald. Among the late Emperor's sons, Chi Fei had always been fearlessly canny. Holding up his flower, he said, "I'm going to give this to my brother, the Crown Prince." He trotted over to the veranda to give it to Chizi. The other children also ran, following him from the courtyard, chirping and buzzing. One child, I forget which, bumped into the eunuch beside Chizi. The eunuch stumbled, and the tea in the pot he was holding spilled right onto Chizi. Ooh, buddy. There was instant chaos. The tea wasn't scalding, and Chizi's clothes were thick, but he still got half soaked, and the eunuch was so scared that his hands shook uncontrollably. I had to go pick Chizi up. Next to me, someone berated the child responsible for the accident. It was then that Chizi unexpectedly spoke. "There is nothing the matter with me. Do not scold him or punish him." His tone was extraordinarily unperturbed. I was surprised in spite of myself. Children these days really were each more mature than the last. Chizi's clothes were soaked through, but he had nothing to change into on hand, and my mother and I were not bold enough to give the Crown Prince any of my old childhood clothes to wear. In the end, we had him take off his outer layer for the time being and sit on a bed wrapped in a quilt while someone went to the palace to fetch his fresh clothes. He sat there, still not moving a muscle. I asked him if he wanted to eat a pastry, and he nodded silently with his eyes cast down. I asked whether he wanted a walnut cookie or a mixed nut cake. He looked at the two plates and still said nothing. I had to bring both plates up to him. He looked at the walnut cookie plate. Only when I picked up a cookie and presented it to him did his hand reach out of the quilt to take it. He brought it up to his lips and nibbled on it. An old eunuch said to me with a smile, "His Highness the Crown Prince isn't very fond of speaking when he visits an unfamiliar place." I felt overpowering unease at this. From that day forward, when Chitan and the others occasionally came to Huai Manor to play, Chizi came with them. Perhaps because he had become better acquainted with me on my mother's birthday, he came with fewer attendants and less ceremony, about the same as the late Emperor's other sons, and he wasn't as constrained as he had been on that day. He became more and more open, except that he still didn't talk much. When he saw me at the palace, he would greet me, awkwardly calling out, "Uncle June." When my father had been out on the battlefield, he had loved to bring home rare and strange items. It was in large part on account of these things that the late Emperor's sons enjoyed coming to Huai Manor so much, especially Chitan. I wonder why. He never stood on ceremony when he took a fancy to something. He had to have it, even if it took throwing a tantrum. But Chizi was different. He never asked for anything, only looked. If he took a liking to something, he would keep looking at it, apparently indifferent, till I couldn't stand it any more and brought the thing to him, and asked whether it was to the Crown Prince's liking. Then he would say with great dignity, "Yes, it's acceptable." He would take it and stash it away, acting as if I had begged him to accept it. tsundere attitude right there. So I thought to myself that, well, the child was a little reserved. On this point, he really did have the makings of an emperor. As I walked, I recalled the past and felt unexpectedly moved. Blink of an eye, my imperial nephews had all grown up. I had made it this far without thinking anything of it, but looking back, I realized that many years had passed. I stood by the palace wall and watched the floating clouds on the horizon. I couldn't resist sighing with emotion. Oh, how quickly the years go by. Behind me, a prince said, "Your Highness Prince Huai." A moment ago, I had felt like an old scholar tree watching the green saplings around me shoot up, graceful and tender. When I heard that voice, I instantly felt like a willow branch in a late spring breeze whose leaves had just turned the perfect green. I turned to look at him. In a voice like a soft willow frond, I said, "Chancellor Lu." Probably his voice cracked a little bit like mine did. All right, hang on. It's a little chilly again today. Which is why I stashed this down here. It's going to be really chilly once we turn on AC. Ooh. Okay. Actually, I'm going to grab a drink of water. Okay. I waited for Liu Tongyi to reach me, then walked beside him. He said to me, "I think I just heard your highness lamenting the passage of the years. Were you moved by the sight of the setting sun?" With an embarrassed smile, I said, "No, I happened to think of the past, so I felt a little nostalgic." Liu Tongyi made an understanding sound. Keeping my composure, I snuck a glance at his quietly elegant face. If he had been someone else and said precisely the same thing, Yun Yu, for example, or Chitan, Chi Li, or any of the rest, he would have certainly been teasing me. But how could Ran Si tease me? He must have been expounding on an artistic concept, like a poem. It was just that I was too vulgar myself and had understood the words to be vulgar. But my response couldn't betray my weakness. I had to match Ransi by being more poetic. So I looked at the setting sun, which was still bright enough to dazzle, and said gently, "Chancellor Lu, do you like to watch the sunset? Every time I see the setting sun, I think of poetry. The words float in my mind like ruddy clouds in the sky." Liu Tongyi brought his sleeve up to his mouth and gave a gentle cough. I waited and heard no response from him. I quickly asked, "Are you unwell, Chancellor Liu? Would you like me to take you home?" With a trace of a smile, Liu Tongyi said, "Oh, it's nothing. There was just something in my throat." He totally chuckled. Who uses ruddy? Like, isn't ruddy kind of murky? Perhaps I was too moved by the sunset. Suddenly I asked Liu Tongyi a question I thought I would never dare to ask. "Chancellor Liu," I asked, "what do you think of me?" As soon as the words were out of my mouth, I regretted them. What could he think of me? He certainly wouldn't tell the truth to my face. Sure enough, Liu Tongyi stared at me. At least his expression remained unchanged. He said, "Why does your highness ask?" I quickly said, "Oh, it's nothing. Perhaps too much has been happening lately, and I've started to feel a little heavy-hearted. If you don't want to answer, then take my question as unasked." "Be at ease, your highness," said Liu Tongyi. "Some things are best left in the past." In saying so, he gently bypassed my question. When I heard this, I felt a peculiar sensation. He had steered the conversation away because that question had been inconvenient to answer. Yeah, but he preferred not to answer rather than fob me off with jargon. Okay, sorry, I thought I had missed. Like, yeah, never mind. I felt a little gratified. While his words of consolation were only said out of politeness, I was still happy to be comforted by him. I don't know why I should have fallen in love with Liu Tongyi, given the present situation at court, even if that rotten old man, Wang Qin, one day began carrying on a clandestine love affair with the Empress Dowager. Liu Tongyi and I would still never stand together. Lius were an illustrious noble house and family whose ancestor had aided our first emperor in establishing the dynasty and received the position of imperial chancellor in return. Official families often live up to the folk saying that wealth doesn't last out 3 generations and fame doesn't last 5, but the Liu clan had always flourished. Liu. Every generation had produced 1 or 2 senior officials who unwaveringly repaid the court's favor, sparing no effort to perform their duty. If only a single plaque of honor for a loyal family existed in the world, then it would surely hang above the door of the Liu residence. Liu. Liu Tongyi's grandfather, Liu Xian, had a younger sister who had been the Tongguan Emperor's empress. When the Tongguan Emperor was still on the throne and my father was a young man who had just set foot on the battlefield, then supervisor of the imperial censorate and brother-in-law to the emperor, Liu Xian repeatedly submitted memorials to the Tongguang emperor asking that, for the sake of his throne and the crown prince's future, his majesty refrain from giving an imperial prince too much military authority. He strongly advised that the Tongguang emperor keep my father in idleness. Luckily, the emperor did not listen, but later his son, the late emperor, kept his guard up against my father as if against a would-be thief. His uncle, Liu Xian's contributions there had been indispensable. Liu Tongyi's father also once had a great future ahead of him, but sadly his luck was poor. Just after he became the 4th-rank prefect of the Jiangdong prefecture, he contracted lung disease in the course of managing a flood and died young. Liu Tongyi was a few years older than Chizi, Chitan, Chili, Yunyu, and the others. There was no connection between the Liu residence and Huai Manor, and he had only returned to the capital after his father died of illness, so I had seen nothing of him as a child. The first time I met him would have been at the palace. I think it was the 15th day of the 8th month, the Mid-Autumn Festival. The late emperor was already quite seriously ill at the time, but he had still exerted himself to hold a moon-viewing banquet in the imperial gardens. The important ministers and their sons had all been invited. Liu Xian must have been in his 70s or 80s then. Wow! Dude lived a while. He remained the head of the court's honest officials. Oh, I missed the description. His hair and beard were white, but he still come tottering to attend. He remained the head of the court's honest officials. Seated at the banquet, he was like the full moon itself. My future father-in-law, Li Yu, the other so-called loyal ministers and able generals who professed themselves aloft from politics, clustered around him like stars. Of course, there was no place for me among them. I had to sit among my cousin Prince or with Yun Ting, Wang Qin, and such others. I was still quite young then, and had nothing to say to them either. I felt dreadfully dull, so I drank some cups of wine, and on the pretext of going to empty my bladder, went for a stroll through the Imperial Gardens shrubbery. A shrubbery! Chitan, Chili, and so on were running around amusing themselves in the Imperial Gardens with palace maids and eunuchs going in circles after them. I stood there watching them for a while, then headed for somewhere quieter. Upon coming to the Imperial Pond, I finally stood still. A gentle breeze, a bright moon, the scent of osmanthus flowers, and a sky full of stars floating upon the surface of the water. Sky full of stars. Sorry, couldn't help myself. Vapor mingled with the scent of flowers and poured into my spirit. I felt my heart become as clear as the pond water. Oh shoot, is that gonna get copyright striked? I don't think I did a good enough job for it to be. We're safe. I stood there for a time. Just as I was about to move on, at the far end of the covered walkway beside the pond where I was headed, I saw a seated youth. I wouldn't say I was a cut-sleeve back then, but presented with such a scene, with such a moon, such a breeze, such water, such a scent of flowers, my first glimpse of that beautiful and elegant youth. For an instant I thought that he was the spirit of the osmanthus flowers given human form. Cool. It was only a momentary daze. When I looked again, I knew that wasn't the case. The youth appeared to be 15 or 16 years old, dressed in a thin robe. Though he seemed subdued, it was clear at a glance that there was nothing ordinary about him. He leaned against a pillar of the walkway as he sat on the steps, holding a book in his hands and reading it by the light of the lantern above his head. He must have been part of some courtier's family, but why had he brought a book to an imperial banquet and snuck off here to read it? I guess that either this youth really did love books as much as his own life, sorry, a little bit of the word was cut off, or a family elder had instructed him to do this. If someone saw him, especially the emperor, he would ask, "What family does this diligent youth belong to?" That should get his reputation off the ground. The youth hadn't noticed me. He held his book in both hands, all his attention apparently focused on reading. It seemed he wasn't doing it for show. I stood there, then stepped forward. "Aren't you worried that reading by such dim light will damage your eyesight?" The youth seemed startled. He raised his head quickly, shut the book in his hands, and stood. I smiled and took a couple more steps forward. His expression gradually calmed. He bowed and said, "Greetings, Your Highness Prince Huai." Presumably we had met earlier at the banquet, but I hadn't taken notice. "No need for such formality," I said. "Just speak naturally. What family do you belong to? Why have you come here to read?" "My name is Liu Tongyi," he answered. "Liu Xian is my grandfather." So he was Liu Xian's grandson. It was understandable, then, that he would have run off to a quiet place to read. He stood there with an easy manner and the refinement of a person raised amid stacks of Confucian classics, befitting of a scion of the Liu clan. He was very good-looking now, but perhaps in another decade there would be a young Liu Xian at court. Alas, what a pity to lose the youth he was now. I scrutinized him from his face to the book in his hands, and found that despite his easy and respectful manner, his sleeves were shaking slightly. He was in the process of stealthily concealing the book he had been reading in his sleeve. "What were you reading just now?" I asked with feigned indifference. Liu Tongyi's expression appeared a little discomforted, but he still said with apparent ease, "Oh, an ordinary book." "Can you show me?" I asked. It's just the standard Mencius. Your Highness Prince Huai must have read it." As he said this, his eyes flickered, like water rippling in the moonlight. "I don't think it is." I glanced at the blue corner sticking out of his sleeve. "Is that so?" I came a little closer and took hold of the sleeve where he was hiding the book, then looked down into his eyes and said, smiling, "You must not have much experience reading books in secret. You have to pay attention to whether the book is upside down when you hide it in your sleeves. You've even shown me the title." I raised his arm and took the book from his sleeve. Written on the cover was the title, "The Legend of the Red-Bearded Hero." This was a chivalric romance that had once been popular in the bookbinderies. So bookbinderies back then are kind of like the low-class common people. So, like for individual publishers. So, not high-class reading. Liu Xian's grandson was reading this? I looked at him in astonishment. Is your name really Liu, not Wang or Yun? The Wang and Yun children were all crafty. If they were caught misbehaving, they could lie about who they were without batting an eyelash. He looked at me a little doubtfully, his eyes as utterly clear as the water of a star-filled pool. I rolled up the book and did right by him. The legend of the red-bearded hero is an imitation, plagiarized from the divine white jade sword, and inferior to it. Moreover, this copy you have is a censored edition. He gave an exclamation and said, I think this edition is already excellent. While the language is direct and unornamented, it is precise and penetrating. The poetry appears crude at first glance, but carefully considered, it feels exceptionally apt. Watching him speak so earnestly, I couldn't help feeling amused. He must have been telling the truth about being Liu Xian's grandson. That's because you haven't read anything better. Among writers of storybooks and romances, this master of Snowstorm House can only be considered average, and his language is all copied from the scholar of the red leaves of the Western Hills, the author of the divine White Jade Sword. There are also other authors, such as The Mad Drunkard, Bai Ruyi, and so on. They are truly outstanding. Liu Tongyi's eyes were bright, his expression rapt. I continued, You'll be able to find them if you sneak over to a bookbindery. In the southwest corner of the capital, on Copper Coin Lane, is a shop that's very well stocked, where you can even buy uncensored editions. Liu Tongyi's eyes shone even brighter. Looking into them, I couldn't help adding, although you could probably still buy the clean editions. The full editions might not be a good fit for you. It might be yellow books. These romances had many descriptions of love between their heroes and various women. The so-called clean editions were what was left over after these parts were excised. I certainly wouldn't read them, but I was worried the things in the full editions would be indigestible to Liu Xian's grandson. Frowning slightly, Liu Tongyi said, Why? I could only say vaguely, the full editions can be slightly explicit concerning matters between men and women. Liu Tongyi said, How? He must have wanted to ask how they were explicit, but as soon as the single word how was out of his mouth, he had a realization and fell silent. I looked at him by moonlight and lamplight. His face seemed slightly flushed. I couldn't resist saying with a laugh, You see? Like I said, you'd be better off reading the clean editions. Liu Tongyi stared at me without speaking. His blush seemed to deepen. Oh? Oh ho? As I laughed, I heard distant footsteps approaching us and returned the book to him at once. Someone's coming. Hide the book well, and remember when you read it in secret at home not to hide it in your bedding, or it may well be shaken out by servants making the bed. Under the bedboard is a more reasonable hiding place. I drew closer to him and whispered, I got beaten when I was little because I didn't hide my books properly. It's a bloody tale. Liu Tongyi had been listening with unwavering attention. Now he laughed. The footsteps came closer and closer. I heard someone calling for me. Your Highness Prince Huai, is that your Highness over there? His Majesty has summoned you. So I hurriedly bade farewell to Liu Tongyi, who tucked the book into his sleeve properly and stood there. As I turned the corner of the path, I saw him leaving by the walkway as well. After that, I did not see him again, and the Liu family was not fond of publicity, so I heard hardly any news of him either. Bit by bit, the encounter left my mind till I had all but forgotten it. I remembered him only some years later. It was not long after Chizi's personal reign began when Liu Tongyi was named the Xiong Zhuang Yuan first place graduate of the year's palace examinations, and his name spread overnight throughout the capital. At the Qianglin banquet, held in honor of the top 3 graduates of the palace examination, I was among those in attendance. As a rule, the banquet was held in the Imperial Gardens, right beside the Imperial Pond. When I arrived at the palace, the 3 new top graduates and the officials attending the banquet were all present. Only the Emperor had yet to arrive. I entered the gardens and from a distance glimpsed the bright red robe of the Zhuang Yuan among a cluster of peonies. Once again, the events of the 15th day of the 8th month some years ago came to mind. Wondered what the youth who had been reading a popular novel in stealth had become. Oh, who? No, yeah. He had indeed been surpassingly beautiful at the time. But there are people who are good-looking when young, but as they mature, grow in an extremely ugly direction. Harsh. I hoped that he didn't look like Liu Xian, minus the beard, wrinkles, and white hair. I was prepared to meet him and take an idle moment to ask whether he had gone on to read the Divine White Jade Sword, and had he read the full edition or the clean one. The figure in the red Shuang Yuan robe had its back to me, in conversation with the 2nd and 3rd place graduates and some elderly courtiers. The first to see me was the Secretariat Director, who was facing the path, said at once, smiling, "Your Highness Prince Huai is here. Greetings, Your Highness." Disclaiming formality, I came forward. The others turned around, and I saw that red-robed figure turn as well. As he did, night ended above the star-filled pond, shining in the moonlight of years past. The morning sun shone bright. The lingering osmanthus fragrance dispensed, and the parasol tree leaves grew green. The crepe myrtle flowers dense. He lifted his sleeves and bowed his head. "Respectful greetings to Your Highness Prince Huai." I heard my own voice say, "No need for such formality, Zhuang Yuan Liu," and in that moment there was no way I could have brought myself to deliver my prepared quip. People are so strange. The whole world takes me for a treacherous prince, and I have always felt unbearably wronged by it, always viewed myself as a loyal subject and a good person. But when I saw Liu Tongyi, I knew instantly that he and I would never be the same kind of person. It was as if a line was drawn before me, plain as day. He stood on the other side of it, like the clearest of clear lakes under the sun, and I stood on this side, like a pot of cloudy noodle broth. All around us there was brightness in the dark, darkness in the bright, and none of it as pure as that patch of blue sky above his head. In a low voice, Yuan Tang said, "In a few years we'll have another Liu Xian." "Perhaps," I said. "Perhaps he'll surpass Liu Xian, at the very least. He wouldn't have Liu Xian's face." He was thinking that. He didn't say that part. Hang on. I can feel my voice start cracking. I told you this chapter's long. We're only like halfway-ish, maybe, through this. It was over a year now that Liu Tongyi had taken up the Imperial Chancellor's seal and stood in his blue robe of office at the head of the court. Never before in the history of this dynasty had a man under 30 been appointed Imperial Chancellor. He was the youngest person in centuries to wear that robe and stand in that position. Yuan Tang said to me, "Your Highness Prince Huai's eye is indeed accurate." And I modestly said, "I do all right." That copy of The Legend of the Red-Bearded Hero once read beneath the glass lantern in the walkway of the Imperial Gardens might have been buried in some corner beneath sage essays and strategies of administration. Or perhaps it had long since been turned into a heap of ashes, swept up and dusted off. But at the Qianglin banquet in the Imperial Gardens, and when he first stood before the court in his robe of office, I stuck slivers of my soul fast in his sleeve. Like a donkey on a leash, I knew that it was stupid to keep going in circles, but I had no choice but to revolve around him. It's a little sad. The ancients had a saying, when brought to a certain pass by pangs of love, a man becomes a sage. I don't know whether in my present situation I amounted to a minor sage or a great sage. I snuck another glance at Liu Tongyi walking beside me. It would have been better if he, like Yun Yu, could have worn brighter colors more often, and better still if his hair wasn't always entirely up. Supposing that in the future I truly did accomplish some staggering labor of loyalty, perhaps that line would disappear. If I asked him then to walk shoulder to shoulder with me, in spirit as well as in body, would he be willing? Though Liu Tongyi was always in my mind, I had never thought of anything really happening between us. At most, I had thought that the preceding scenario might come true, or perhaps in addition to that, we could occasionally play Wakey, chat, drink tea, things of that nature. That would be plenty. I was moved by my own inner world, and on that point of once again sighing with emotion as I looked upon the setting sun. An irascible voice said darkly beside me, Imperial Uncle. My soul was immediately rankled back from the evening glow into my mortal shell. I turned my head and saw Chitan's face, as irascible as his voice. I was astonished. Where did you crop up from? Chitan looked at me dolefully. Imperial Uncle, I followed you all this way and called to you so many times, and you wouldn't even look at me. Oh, well, I said, I had something on my mind. I didn't notice. My mind had been wandering something fierce. Perhaps I had forgotten myself in front of Ranci. Feigning nonchalance, I swept a glance over at Liu Tongyi. His expression was normal, with a trace of a smile at the corners of his lips. It was probably all right. I was just about to speak again when a languid voice behind me said, Your Highness Prince Dai, I believe I was right to say His Highness Prince Huai wouldn't come back to himself before he reached the palace gate. You've lost the bet. The speaker came up beside Chitan. Supervisor Yun, I said. Why are you always in the same place as Chitan? Yun Yu smiled. Chitan raced to speak first. Imperial Uncle, Supervisor Yun and I happened to cross each other while chasing after you and Chancellor Liu. Don't misunderstand. What do you mean, don't misunderstand? Smiling, Yun Yu said, Your Highness Prince Huai and Chancellor Liu have met again? Oh, yes. Also a coincidence, a mere coincidence, I said. Liu Tongyi stopped walking and said, Your Highness Prince Huai, it seems His Highness Prince Dai has an urgent matter to discuss. I will bid you farewell. Please stay, I said. Chitan echoed, Please stay, Chancellor Liu. Yun Yu stood by and watched. Was there something else, Your Highness? Said Liu Tongyi. Oh, I said. It was nothing, only I thought that Prince Dai might not only have been looking for me, but also had something to say to Chancellor Liu, so I asked if you would stay for the moment. Yun Yu chipped in. Yes, Your Highness Prince Huai put a timely word out to keep Chancellor Liu back before His Highness Prince Dai could speak. Seems that His Highness Prince Dai does indeed have something important to say to Chancellor Liu. It seemed Yun Yu was having a close match with my nephew Chitan today. Each said something more awkward than the last. Fortunately, Liu Tongyi seemed not to have noticed any implications. With perfect timing, Chitan said, "It's like this. The other day, I put Chancellor Liu and my Imperial Uncle, Prince Huai, to the trouble of appraising a fake antique for me, which saved me a considerable sum of money." You a considerable sum of money? You sure not your uncle a considerable sum of money? That would otherwise have been wrongly spent. I have put together a banquet at my residence and entreat my Imperial Uncle and Chancellor Liu to honor me with their presence tonight. It wasn't in vain that I had doted on Chitan since he was little. The child grew more and more capable all the time. Liu Tongyi made no strenuous effort to decline. He agreed readily. Of course, I had no reason not to agree. Sorry, hair. "I see I have no business here," said Yunyu, "so I will take my leave." He made to turn away. Oop, sorry. He made to turn away. Chitan immediately said, "I entreat Supervisor Yun to honor me with his presence as well. I was the loser in our bet just now, so I ought to invite you to dinner." Then to me he said, "Right, Imperial Uncle?" Why was Chitan talking so strangely today? All I could do was nod and say, Of course, of course. That's only natural." Yunyu looked at Chitan, then at me. He said, "Then I really will go. Do not hide your fine wine, your Highness Prince Dai." Chitan answered at once, smiling, "Of course. I am sure my Imperial Uncle wouldn't allow it." With the gate of the Imperial Palace before us, Chitan suddenly tugged on my sleeve and kept me back a couple of steps. He put on a suggestive smile and whispered in my ear, "Imperial Uncle, Supervisor Yun and I followed you for ages, watching you with all your attention focused on walking beside Chancellor Liu. At dinner, leave Chancellor Liu to me. You can focus on talking to Supervisor Yun." I choked on the win. Supervisor Yun. Chitan flapped my sleeve and winked. "Imperial Uncle, outsiders may not be able to tell, but your nephew knows everything." "You know what?" Chitan said in my ear, "I was just saying that my Imperial brother, how these last few years you've been, well." Tossing out this statement, he released my sleeve and made straight for Liu Tongyi. "Chancellor Liu." So now I knew who had spoken before the Emperor to make him say there was something more to my relationship with Yunyu. I had nothing left to hope for from Prince Dai. My lungs ached from vexation, and I couldn't even call him a little bastard, because if he was a little bastard, that made me this little bastard's uncle. Settling my breathing, I went home to change into casual clothes, then came to Dai Manor. Oh my god, it's a Myanmar situation. Man. Liu Tongyi and Yunyu had both already taken their seats. Chitan really knew how to put on a production. With 4 people eating, he had set 2 tables. The 2 long, narrow tables faced each other, one on either side of the small hall. Food and wine were laid out on both tables, and 2 chairs had been placed at each one. One table for him and Liu Tongyi, one for me and Yunyu. Quite a skillful partition. The whole width of the center of the hall lay between the 2 tables, 18,000 li in all. "There are only 4 of us eating," I said, "and neither Chancellor Liu nor Supervisor Yun is an outsider. Couldn't you have just laid one table? It would be cheerful and companionable. You can't be worried that Supervisor Yun and I will fight you for the food." "You, Chancellor Liu, and Supervisor Yun are all honored guests," said Chitan. would be too vulgar to heap a single table with dishes. That's no way to receive any of you. I have made other arrangements." Saying so, he picked up a pitcher to pour wine for Liu Tongyi. "Chancellor Liu, if you'll permit me." Liu Tongyi half rose from his seat. "This is too great an honor for me. I will pour for myself." He took the pitcher from Chitan. Perhaps it was my mistake, but Chitan seemed to brush Liu Tongyi's hand. Yun Yu was holding a wine pitcher and pouring wine. He gently elbowed my arm and aimed a look in Chitan's direction. He had seen it too, so I wasn't being oversensitive. As I ate, I watched the table opposite. Chitan was a flurry of movement, hardly pausing at all. "Chancellor Liu, try this. This came from the Western region's tribute. It's called something something key sausage and contains foreign pork, not like our ordinary pork." Vulgar. "Chancellor Liu, what do you think of this dish? Too bland or too strong?" I put down my empty cup and picked up the wine pitcher to refill it. Yun Yu idly pushed almonds around in a dish with his chopsticks. Chi-Chen had expended all his skills on Liu Tongyi today. Yun Yu didn't eat sweet and salty foods, and the dishes in front of him just happened to be exactly those. Oh, goodness. He's really making a mess out of all of this, isn't he? I rolled up my sleeve and swapped 2 of his dishes with untouched ones in front of me. Yun Yu said quietly to me, "Why does it strike me that Prince Dai is competing with you, Your Highness?" I frowned. I recalled that Chitan had never shared my interest. Yun Yu, with a false smile, said, "Your Highness is free not to believe me. Would you like to make a bet?" Soon I understood the true motive behind Chitan's solicitousness. 2 domestics brought a small table to the center of the room. On it was a brocade box. "Don't tell me you brought something else." Smiling brightly, Chitan said to Liu Tongyi, "Chancellor Liu, I never had any indulgence apart from collecting antiques. Now that I have you here, there are a few things I'd like to trouble you to have a look at for me." He set down his ivory chopsticks and clapped. Who needs ivory chopsticks? 2 servants opened the box and lifted out a jade vase. "This," Chitan said, "this is said to be a love token given by Liu Buwei to Lady Xiao." So Liu Buwei was a chancellor to King Shuangxian of Qin during the Warring States period. Lady Xiao was a dancing girl in Liu Buwei's home who married Shuangxiang. A sprig of peach blossoms is featured on the vase, expressing love. What does Chancellor Liu think of this vase? Liu Tongyi looked at the vase and with a faint smile said, "The jade is good quality." Then he said nothing further. Chitan waited, then asked, "It's Providence?" "I cannot be certain," said Liu Tongyi. Chitan's expression dimmed. He wasn't stupid in matters like these. Liu Tongyi had noticed something amiss, but couldn't very well say so. Chitan waved a hand. The 2 servants packed up the vase in its brocade box and bore it away. Then they returned bearing another box with a wine pitcher inside it. Chitan said that it was of roughly the same period as the vase and had been used by Ying Shang. So Ying Shang was Zhuang Xian's son by Lady Xiao and the first Chinese ruler to take on the title of emperor, styled Qin Shi Huang, first emperor of Qin. Liu Tongyi praised the pattern on the pot and then once more refrained from saying more. Chitan's expression darkened again. I sat there looking on as he had item after item brought out and drooped increment by increment at each appraisal. I couldn't quite bear to watch. I whispered feelingly to Yunyo. He's already bought them. He may as well set them out as though they were real. Why submit himself to such torment? Yunyu shot me a glance. Your Highness Prince Huai appears greatly distressed. I sighed. Of course I'm distressed. More of my own money went into those things than Prince Dai's. Dude, just stop giving him money. Like, he's kind of shit at picking things. Like, you're clearly funding a horrible habit. Yunyu raised a hand to refill his wine cup. Or my wine cup. Your Highness's money went to doting on your nephew. It didn't go to waste. His smile showed great delight in my misery. Chitan's precious antiques were still being brought in one after another. No sooner had a clay horse been taken away than a pretty serving girl came forward gracefully bearing a jade tray. Why is it a lovely lady this time? Yunyu asked. You may not be aware, Supervisor Yoon, said Chitan, that this treasure can only be handled by a woman. The beautiful serving girl knelt with the jade tray in her hands. On the tray lay a piece of yellow silk cloth, upon which was a piece of jade. Chitan said, This was a grave good that a lady of the former kingdom of Wu was buried holding in her mouth. Can prevent a corpse from rotting and keep it looking as it did in life. It holds strong yin energy in it, so no matter what the season, it is as cold as a piece of ice in winter. Will you feel it, Chancellor Liu? I could not help saying, a thing from the mouth of a corpse, and you ask Chancellor Liu to touch it at the dinner table? Do you wish to keep Chancellor Liu from eating? Chitan paused. Then, as if it had just occurred to him, he apologized repeatedly. Liu Tongyi naturally said it was of no matter, and he really did reach out to touch the piece of jade. He said, This item is a true treasure, a rare sight. I have only read of it in books and never thought to see it with my own eyes in your Highness's residence today. This is a blessing of 3 lifetimes. Chitan was startled. His eyes glazed over and fixed upon Liu Tongyi. Chancellor Liu, are you telling the truth? Liu Tongyi smiled. This item in your Highness's collection is truly extraordinary. Chitan's face opened like the seed of a sterculia in water. His smile was radiant. Liu stood and went to the wash basin to clean his hands. Chitan, holding his wine cup, stared after him. He tipped back his head and drained the rest of his wine in one gulp. Imperial Uncle, I just had a thought. I saw that peculiar light shining in his eyes, and instinct told me that he was about to say something just as peculiar to match. Sure enough, Chitan, squeezing his wine cup and rotating it, stared at some point in empty space as he said, Just now, when Chancellor Liu smiled at me like that, I suddenly thought that if he were a woman, I would certainly wed him. Like a comedy of errors at this dinner. Chitan looked at me with a burning gaze. Imperial Uncle, do you think I'm becoming like you? Unexpectedly, the first thing I thought of was Chitan's young wife, who, at only 17 years old, was reported to be 8 months pregnant. You ought to give careful consideration to this question, I said. Chitan squeezed his wine cup again. Consideration has no place in this. Imperial Uncle, I always tell you the truth, and Supervisor Yoon is hardly an outsider. How can a thing like this be up to me? No wine remained in his cup, but he still brought it to his lips. Just now, when Chancellor Liu nodded like that and then smiled, my heart beat fast. Uh-oh, did he just get wife-beamed? Yunyu said, Prince Dai's symptoms do resemble your Highness's somewhat. I shot a glance at Chitan. Your heart beat fast, did it? Here, I have something to show you. I felt around in my clothes and produced an item I had prepared in advance. I raised it. When doing battle in foreign parts, my father took this piece of jade from the body of the Khan, presented it to the Tongguang Emperor, who had then graciously granted my father possession of it. It was passed down among the foreigners from generation to generation since the Han period, and its authenticity is undeniable. Chitan's eyes glazed over again. His gaze was glued to the piece of jade in my hand. Imperial Uncle, I waggled the jade ornament. Is your heart beating fast? Chitan's eyes were filled with ardor. He nodded. Yes. Do you feel the same looking at me as you did earlier looking at Chancellor Liu? I asked. Chitan's face flushed bright red at once. He nodded again. I put the piece of jade away and said solemnly, No need to worry. You aren't a cut sleeve. Chitan's eyes were fixed on the place where I had stashed the piece of jade, his gaze like a hook. I pretended not to see, lifted the wine pitcher, and poured myself a cup. I counseled him earnestly. You aren't a child anymore, and there are words you ought to weigh carefully in your mind before you say them aloud. Had what you said just now been overheard, I would have been standing accused. Your mother would have come to settle the score with me, or else she would have gone to the Empress Dowager to complain that you were spending all your time with me and I had led you astray. The two hooks in Chitan's eyes glittered bright as snow. He said, Imperial Uncle, you are indeed solicitous towards your nephew. I only said what I did because I was talking to you and Supervisor Yoon is part of our circle. Through your instruction, Imperial Uncle, Yoon is, I have seen the light. Only, I thought that while the feeling was similar just now, it still wasn't precisely the same as when I looked at Chancellor Liu. Won't you demonstrate it again for me, Imperial Uncle? This is as far as my instruction goes, I said placidly. The rest depends on your own comprehension. Chitan dimmed and bent his head to serve himself food. I added, Most importantly, when Chancellor Liu returns, don't say anything to his face that might lead to a misunderstanding. Chancellor Liu is a man of high moral character, a pillar of His Majesty's court. You cannot be too irreverent. Yun Yu said, smiling, Your Highnesses have such an affectionate relationship. Chitan picked up his food. Imperial Uncle, Liu Tongyi must have seen everything there is to see to get his Chancellor's rank. Everyone who's friendly with him says that Chancellor Liu is different from all the other Lius. He's easygoing, open-minded, and extremely understanding. Why do you imagine him to be such a pedant, Imperial Uncle? What's more, he said, tugging one side of his mouth into a suggestive smiler, Chancellor Liu is 2 years older than Supervisor Yoon and still unmarried. Who knows what might be the reason for that? For some reason, when I heard his concluding remark, it felt as though my heart were being raked by claws, then squeezed. I coughed and said, Do not discuss people behind their backs. If Chancellor Liu should come back and overhear. At this point, a dab of pale blue-green appeared at the door, and I hastily shut my mouth. Liu Tongyi stepped inside and resumed his seat. Chitan said, You're back, Chancellor Liu. I was just discussing you behind your back with my Imperial Uncle. My Imperial Uncle praised you as a man of high moral character, a pillar of the court. I've never known him to praise just anyone like that. Just for that, I must ask you to determine the authenticity of a treasure my Imperial Uncle has brought with him today. What a little punk. Chitan hadn't given up, and he would stop at nothing. When he had concluded his remarks, Liu Tongyi matter-of-factly looked my way and said with a smile, Thank you for your praise, Your Highness Prince Huai. I am unworthy. I wonder what treasure Your Highness has brought. When he looked at me, it was like the sweet breeze of late spring wafted over me. Oh, merely a foreign bauble. I won't trouble. Chitan cut me off midway. Spare us the civilities, Imperial Uncle. Chancellor Liu has already agreed, and I want to take advantage of another opportunity to learn the trick of antiques appraisal from him. I had no choice but to reach into my robes. The points of the twin hooks in Chitan's eyes reappeared, shining coldly. I produced the piece of jade and offered it to an attendant beside me, letting him convey it to Liu Tongyi. Liu Tongyi held it and said, looking at me, I am uninformed in the appraisal of foreign works, but from the color and grain of this jade, must be an antique with great history. Besides which, I have seen the design on this ornament in a book. Since the Sui dynasty, this design has been exceedingly rare. Must date roughly to the Han period. However, it is beyond me to provide more detailed observations. I gasped in honest admiration. Chancellor Liu's reputation as an expert is well merited. Chitan's face was also full of commendation. I have been enlightened. The color and grain Chancellor Liu speaks of, he came close, snatched the piece of jade from Liu Tongyi's hand, and brought it up to his own nose. Is this it? Guide me through examining it. Once it was in his hands, my piece of jade was as good as gone. There was no turning back. Looking at Chitan and that piece of jade, I felt a faint ache in my heart. Dude, what a brat. Like, I get spoiling your niece and nephew. Like, I get it. But, like, that's yours, man. Like, buck up and say, like, all right, give it back. Like, thank you. Appraised it. Still mine. Liu Ting Yi looked at Chitan's hand and frowned faintly. Only it seems that this mark here is damage made by a blade and of recent date. He lifted his hand, took the piece of jade back from Chitan, and studied it with concentration. That mark was made when my late father grappled with the enemy leader, a matter of 20-some years ago, I said. Liu Tongyi's brow relaxed, and he said, I see. He offered the piece of jade to the attendant beside him. One can almost hear the clash of weapons on the battlefield. Under Chitan's covetous gaze, I took the piece of jade back from the attendant and returned it to my robes. Good on you, Liu Tongyi. Thank you. Thank you for getting it back for him, because he wasn't going to step up and get it for himself. Its encounter with Chancellor Liu today is like a musician meeting a kindred spirit who can comprehend his music. I raised my cup to Liu Tongyi in a show of thanks, and he returned the civility, smiling faintly. Well, and also, like, his dad got that from a battlefield. Like, it's his. Yunyu raised his cup as well and said, Your Highness Prince Huai's endless praise for Chancellor Liu makes me so ashamed I can hardly keep my seat. Chitan's head was hanging glumly again, and he was just stuffing food into his mouth. He quickly put in a muffled word. I'm the one who ought to be ashamed. Normally, my Imperial Uncle never stopped speaking of Supervisor Yun. When I said that my Imperial Uncle never praises just anyone, it was because Supervisor Yun isn't just anyone to him. Dude, let it go. Yunyu leaned back in his chair and smiled. Chitan looked fawningly at me with shining eyes. Imperial Uncle, can you show me that piece of jade again later? In that moment, I felt an inexpressible disappointment in my nephew Prince Dai. Chitan, I said seriously, what you just said is highly open to misinterpretation. Fortunately, only Chancellor Liu is present today and no one else. Otherwise, if someone were to think that Supervisor Yun is like me, you would be giving offense. What's the matter with you lately, Imperial Uncle? Chitan said in shock. You're like an old woman, nitpicking everything I say. As if Supervisor Yun couldn't take a joke or look after himself. Though you prefer men, Imperial Uncle, that doesn't mean everyone who isn't just anyone to you must have that kind of relationship with you. Everyone understands that. Besides which, if you and Supervisor Yun really were in love, then he certainly wouldn't care. Isn't that so, Supervisor Yun? He raised his wine cup and drank a big gulp. Actually, though Supervisor Yun, please don't be offended if I use you as an example. I think that my Imperial Uncle must be searching for a remarkable person, someone like you. My Imperial Uncle is certainly so loose only because he hasn't truly fallen in love. His heart is unbound. Yunyu was still half leaning back in his chair. He raised his eyebrows. All I could do was say stiffly with a dry laugh, "A joke ought to stand up to scrutiny. I'm not Supervisor Yoon's type." My statement held many meanings. First, Yoon Yu was indeed not a cut sleeve. Second, Yoon Yu had the typical temperament of an aristocratic scion. His tastes were undiscriminating. He chose brothel boys and girls as it pleased him. Furthermore, everyone knew that Supervisor Yoon was somewhat facetious and only dallied with virgins. For anyone with prior involvements, be they a beauty whose praises rose to the heaven, he wouldn't spare them so much as a glance. Not gonna lie, that kind of gives me the ick. Like, it does. It does give me the ick. Third, though Yoon Yu was handsome, I had known him for many years and was well acquainted with his disposition. I truly could not conceive that Supervisor Yoon would one day willingly submit himself to another in bed. He was proud and ambitious. Yeah, if I had a nephew like that, he would certainly not be getting a Lufufu from me. Yeah, forget a Labubu, he wouldn't get a Lafufu. He would be the one picking out Lafufus and thinking they were and paying Labu prices. Not that he deserves them. Dude needs better friends. Like, truly. I'm not kidding. He probably would. Chitan's significant hints making him out to be my lover might already have displeased him. Chitan finally gained some comprehension. He shook his head and said, "My Imperial Uncle is just too romantic. I've had too much to drink and let my mouth run. I hope Supervisor Yoon will forgive me." As I was about to apologize to Yoon Yu on Chitan's behalf, Yoon Yu said with a smile, "No matter, your Highness was only joking with me. As for His Highness Prince Huai's romanticism, I think you make too much of it. Reality, His Highness's Prince Huai's preferences have never been incompatible with mine." Chitan's comprehension upon manifesting frequently rose to a perplexing pinnacle. In this instance, he looked at me, then at Yoon Yu. With an astonished and dazed expression, he said, Are you saying? He looked at me again, then turned to Yoon Yu, his eyes unexpectedly filled with admiration. With a sigh, he said, "I never thought he would. Supervisor Yoon's tastes are quite singular." For a moment, I was bewildered. Then I understood and all but upended a cup of wine into my lap. "I have always had a preference for strong flavors," Yoon Yu said lightly. "My appetites are a little different from the norm, so I rarely fight over food at the table." I sat there watching as a trace of a smile appeared on Liu Tongyi's lips. An eminently sensible position. Shortly thereafter, dinner ended. Yoon Yu was the first to rise and excuse himself. He said he still had business to attend to and floated off. Liu Tongyi followed suit in excusing himself, and I went after him. Outside, before we respectively boarded carriage and sedan, I said to Liu Tongyi, "Prince Dai spoke uncouthly today and put Supervisor Yoon a little out of temper, and then even I made a fool of myself. It was a wretched performance. Jests told at the table are forgotten as soon as they are heard," said Liu Tongyi. "I no longer recall anything. If I was discourteous in any way, I hope your Highness will not take it to heart." We exchanged another round of pleasantries. I watched him bend to board a sedan, and then turned away and got into my carriage. Actually, I'm going to blow my nose real quick. Okay. I returned to my manor, where the atmosphere was still somewhat dismal after what had transpired with the princess. Dude, I almost forgot the princess with all that else has been going on. I called for a pitcher of wine and sat alone in the little gardens outside my bedroom to drink. He's got a high tolerance. Normally, I thought nothing of it, but tonight, sitting there under the lone moon in the shade of the trees, a sudden sense of loneliness stole over me. Everywhere I went, there were only false words, so false that I could no longer tell what was true. It's a very sad statement. Take Liu Tongyi. It was unrealistic to expect that he would ever say anything to me that was true and from the heart rather than mere politeness. Earlier at Dai Manor, just before leaving, Yun Yu had said something to me, and it was only that I shouldn't forget the appointment at Yuhua Pavilion. Starting to wonder about that, the rebellion meeting thing. It's like, are we just not going to talk about that? Like, at Yuhua Pavilion, Yun Tang and the others would discuss with me when to act. The arrangements of many years, the plans laid in secret, would at last be about to culminate in an uprising to seize the empire. Recall that it was years ago on a similarly moonlit night that Yun Tang and Wang Qin said to me, "An incompetent child clings to the throne, and an ignorant woman monopolizes power for her own ends. We, for the good of the nation and its people, have selected a wise leader to throw in our lot with. We wish your highness Prince Huai to take command." Ooh. Total hogwash. Chizi's mettle as a ruler far outstripped the late emperor's. He'd certainly go down in history as a wise sovereign. The Empress Dowager was indeed a stupid woman, but fortunately her stupidity went to the core. Once Chizi was a little older, it would be beyond her to exercise any control over the affairs of state. It's a little rude. It was only because I was a mediocre and useless cutsleeve, and Huai Manor was reputed to have that secret power that could overthrow the government, that Yun Tang and Wang Qin had temporarily banded together and come to me. When they had used me as a ladder to get over the wall and disposed of me after seizing the throne. Oh, it must be the TV show upstairs. Sorry, that sounded like a tornado siren. It was like, I didn't think it was that windy today. The two sides would face off and the Empire would go to the victor. So they're trying to use him and then they'll fight each other. This was a fact that even an idiot could discern at a glance. So I agreed. I had been embroiled in this conspiracy with Yun Tang and Wang Qin ever since. I remember my mother saying to me before she passed away, "Your father made too great a contribution and left behind such an encumbrance that you, your children, and grandchildren will all be mistrusted. This is how so-called affairs of state operate. Only by washing your hands of it as soon as you can and retiring to a remote place can you ensure a good ending for yourself." That sucks. She was always so clear-sighted, yet I hadn't done what she said. Perhaps ultimately in me flowed some of the same hot blood that had filled my father's veins. I was just a little unsatisfied, a little discontented. I remember my father's homecomings from the wars when I was still a child, the radiance in his face when he spoke of the battlefield. In his heart there was nothing but the nation, nothing but loyalty, nothing but the empire of the Jin clan. But he left behind only suspicion, only a son now saddled with the reputation of a malignant tumor. About half a lifetime of mediocrity, I just wanted to be able to do something remarkable. To make the so-called honest officials to make everyone in the world understand that Huai Manor wasn't a den of malignant tumors, that the name Prince Huai was written among the ranks of loyal subjects and not on the list of traitors. Aren't you literally helping plan a rebellion? Or, like, are you gonna snitch? My father spent his life waging war and only wanted to bring stability to the Jing clan, empire, so all its people could live in peace. At the very least, I could be like him. This once, I could protect the empire he had guarded all his life, for no other reason than that I had called him father. Perhaps it was not in vain that Chizzy had called me Imperial Uncle for so many years, regardless of whether he meant it sincerely or was only going through the motions out of obligation. But as for what would happen to me after this, what my final outcome would be, maybe I had not thought it through. Maybe the best possible outcome for me was that Liu Tongyi might sincerely call me Your Highness Prince Huai, that Chizzy might sincerely call me Imperial Uncle. Drinking alone beneath the moon, I suddenly thought that my path now was in fact even more foolish than my father's had been. What the fuck did power over the Empire have to do with me? Whether I existed or not, it would all be the same. Even if I weren't there to spy on Yun Tang and Wang Qin, perhaps their uprising would still fail. At worst, perhaps neither of them would have his power ripped out at the roots, and occasional small brouhaha might arise. But as long as the heads were gone, it would be hard for the hanger-ons to get anywhere. What need was there for me to be a spy? If I didn't do it, I would be the same old mediocre Prince Huai, viewed as a malignant tumor by the honest officials, suspected all my life by my nephew, the Emperor, and his mother. So all the stirring motives I had thought of were fake. Maybe my only goal was to win myself a good reputation. I didn't know yet whether that was possible. This is how thinking works. The more you think, the deeper you go, and the more you go in circles. Finally, I drank myself into a stupor, discovered in a murky daze that my eyes had closed, then opened my eyes in the same murky daze to find that I had been asleep in bed. It was already broad daylight. Chief Steward Chiao stood by my bedside. Your Highness, you're awake at last. Last night I saw that you were inebriated and had fallen asleep in the garden, so I had someone assist me in getting you back to your bedroom. There was a dull, throbbing pain in my head. I wrestled my swollen eyelids open and asked, What time is it? Chief Steward Chiao said, Nearly noon. I threw back the covers. Chief Steward Chiao said, Supervisor Yoon is here. He is in the front hall. I knew very well the reason that for Yun Yu's visit was to make sure I didn't forget about the appointment at Yuhua Pavilion. Probably he would also have something to say concerning Liu Tongyi. I got out of bed and said to Chief Steward Chiao, Instruct the kitchen to prepare the usual. Supervisor Yoon might as well stay to eat. Chief Steward Chiao bowed. I've already told the kitchen to prepare. When I came to the front hall, Yun Yu was seated, quite at ease, sipping a cup of tea. I smiled. Supervisor Yoon. Yun Yu stood and smiled as well. Your Highness. I took my seat. I rose late today. I did not know you were coming. No matter, said Yun Yu. I didn't wait long anyway. I'm only afraid I have disturbed your Highness's rest. He looked around. The decorations in your Highness's front hall are always changing. I see there's been a change since the day before yesterday. Oh, I said. Though this was my own hall, perhaps I had been too busy over the last couple of days to note any alteration. I looked around, and it seemed the same as before. Perhaps the servants adjusted the arrangements while cleaning. I haven't noticed. Yun Yu narrowed his eyes slightly. The decorations seemed to have been moved around. Has Prince Dai requested something of your Highnesses again? Probably. I mean, it took the other vase. With the hint, I remembered. Prince Dai hasn't had the time these past few days. Yesterday I presented a peach stone carving to His Majesty. How fortunate that I hadn't forgotten about this on my return last night, and had immediately had the banquet of the 8 immortals peach stone wrapped up and delivered to the palace before retiring to my room to think. Yunyu said, I see. At this, I recalled that the carving had been a gift, I rather thought, from Yunyu. He said it was a trinket brought back from Jiangnan by a pupil of his father. I rushed to apologize. I presented it to His Majesty without a word to you. That was an oversight on my part. I hope you can excuse me. There was nothing unusual about Yunyu's expression. He smiled faintly and said, It's nothing, only a crude marketplace bauble. I'm honored that your highness favored it by displaying it in the hall for many years, that it has now been presented as a gift to His Majesty. Only, if it has pleased His Majesty, I would want a favor from your highness. I nodded. Naturally, I owe you a great favor. Because we were in the front hall, unavoidably surrounded by eyes and ears, Yunyu only made it clear that he might come to collect on the favor at any time, then went on to discuss the handcrafts of various places in Jiangnan, then its scenery and customs. We chatted a while until Chief Steward Chiao came to report that lunch was ready. Yunyu stood. Oh, then I won't disturb your highness's meal. Excuse me. Smiling, I said, Why so polite today, Supervisor Yoon? Anyone would think I usually hide in my room to eat in secret. Would you like me to write you out a formal invitation right now? I gestured, and Yunyu proceeded with me to the parlor, where lunch was about to be served. At the table we were seated, and the dishes were laid out before us, and the wine cups were filled. And at last, without any hurry, he said, I am afraid that because I joked with your highness in front of Chancellor Liu at Dai Manor last night, your highness would be resentful and have nothing for me to eat today. I picked up my chopsticks and said, I have always been broad-minded, never vengeful. Besides, even if I were vengeful, I still wouldn't dare not to invite you to eat with me. Yunyu said, I was judged a gentleman by my own mean standards. He lowered his voice and added, 2 days hence, at Yunhua Pavilion, I have a great gift to give your highness Prince Huai, by way of apologizing. As expected, it was all about Hua Pavilion. I said, Fine, I will be expecting it. A few cups of wine later, Yunyu picked up the subject once more. He said to me, Your Highness, do you suppose that Chancellor Liu understood the true meaning behind my joke last night? I collected my thoughts. I wanted to suppose that Ranci had understood what Yunyu had said yesterday and therefore answered as he had. I wanted nothing better than to suppose that, but I didn't quite dare. Ranci. After all, he was no one else. He was Liu Tongyi. Yunyu sipped his wine. This is Chancellor Liu we are talking about, after all. He must have discerned the truth. He raised his eyebrows. His answer was just perfect. Isn't your highness overcome with delight? I pretended not to understand, gave a casual laugh, and steered the subject away. When the meal ended, I invited Yunyu to have a seat in the rear courtyard. No one was around now. We were in the gazebo above the pond, with a cool breeze blowing. Yunyu held back his sleeve and poured tea. I said, I will not forget the appointment 2 days hence. Please set your mind at ease, Supervisor Yoon. The fragrance of the tea mingled with the breeze and rippled through the gazebo, faint and subtle. Yunyu said, I am a little preoccupied today and have been long-winded. I'm afraid I have irritated your highness, but some words must be spoken directly at the outset. This great deed has been so many years in the making. Does your highness think that we have truly managed to let nothing slip? Whether we have or not, I said, I think it makes no great difference. My nephew, the Emperor, and the Empress Dowager would be constantly on guard looking for an opportune moment to take me down, regardless of whether I behaved myself. Yunyu did not respond. I tapped my forehead with a fan and continued. Actually, Supervisor Yoon, there is something I've been meaning to ask you. It is a matter of course that I would do this, but why are you doing it? Yun Tang's power and influence were overwhelming, and Yun Yu, at his age, was only slightly surpassed in his position at court by Liu Tongyi. Even if I were to become emperor, father and son stood to gain hardly anything. It wouldn't have rung true for me not to voice this doubt. Yun Yu paused, then said seriously, because I think that your highness Prince Huai is the true son of heaven. You're being facetious, Supervisor Yoon, I said. I can't even fall for Liu Tongyi without you turning it into an endless joke, and here you are suddenly so formal. Yunyu's expression altered again. Something seemed to flash over his face and through his eyes, but his smile returned. To be honest, it's that your highness has a choice to be law-abiding or not. While I was born, Yun Tang's son. Can the son of a malignant tumor be healthy flesh? Does the guy not realize he just admitted he has a crush on Liu Tongyi? And I'm just saying. I was silent. I could not have answered this. Yunyu continued. Therefore, I must persist in saying too much, Your Highness. I think that some things in our lives are fixed, and all we can do is submit to fate. No good will come of wrestling with fate. Though Yunyu acted like he was soothing my doubts, his tone was self-mocking in the extreme. Looking at him, for some reason, I felt a bit of pity. In fact, Yunyu was a little like me. Both of us had been seen from birth as future termites in the pillars of court, regardless of that reality. My father and I were wrongly suspected, so I could raise a cry of injustice. But Yun Tang truly lived up to his reputation. Or rather, lived down to it. My title of greatest tumor ought by rights to have gone to him. Common superstition says that a person born into a wealthy household must have burned the best incense and accumulated merit in a past life. To look at Yun Yu, this wasn't entirely accurate. It really was hard to say what kind of fortune he had accumulated to be born Yun Tang's son. I stood and gazed into the distance outside the gazebo. I deepened my voice and smiled. It is a little strange to hear you speak of fate. I have never bowed to it myself. I slowly curled my left hand into a fist and pronounced the next few words offhandedly, but with force behind them. I believe that to obtain something, I need only want it. Having said this, even I admired myself. For a dizzy instant, it seemed that I had truly extended my hand to grasp the throne. Behind me, Yun Yu clapped twice. My father and I and Lord Wang will only follow a prince with this boldness. Only this daring can truly command the empire. I turned and repaid Yun Yu with a faint smile. And I require aids such as Grand Tutor Yun, Lord Wang, and you, Supervisor Yun. In fact, my recent attempts to become friendly with Liu Tongyi have been to learn of the true position of those close to my nephew, the Emperor. Yun Yu shook his head and said, I am afraid that it will be difficult for your highness to learn their true position from Liu Tongyi. I must continue to speak out of turn. That man is a difficult character. Why do you think... Yun Yu looked directly at me. Your Highness, why do you think Liu Tongyi is still unmarried? My heart tightened again. Yun Yu's lips tipped up slightly at the corners. The reason Liu Tongyi is unmarried is probably the same reason that I to this day remain unmarried, and that your highness has no children. My heart sank. Yun Yu spoke the truth. The real reason I had no children wasn't that I wasn't interested in women, and the reason Yun Yu was unmarried wasn't that he was a cut sleeve. It was just that, with a wife and children, one had ties and encumbrances. If one's great undertaking failed, it would be throwing those lives away in vain. As far as the long upstanding conspiracy went, Chizzy and the Empress Dowager must have been aware, or if not aware, always planning to pluck out unseen dangers. I had never wanted to think deeply about these things. Deep thought could only lead to unhappiness. That Liu Tongyi was unmarried meant he was also engaged in preparations like these, so hardly anyone brought it up, and marriage proposals had been scarce. And Chizzy, and even the Empress Dowager, who loved best of all to arrange marriages, had pretended to be staying out of it. Only when the great undertaking was behind him could he consider domestic matters. The great undertaking in his case was to pluck out the hidden danger that threatened the throne. As Chancellor, there could be no doubt that in this great undertaking Liu Tongyi had full authority to plan and to arrange. In his plans, in his arrangements, the matter of greatest priority, almost beyond a doubt, was how to kill me. Ouch. That's a little harsh. Yun Yu came to my side. His hands were behind his back, and his gaze meaningful. It is fortunate that your highness only wishes to learn the truth from Liu Tongyi. Supposing your highness had truly fallen in love with this man, given his disposition, it would lead to nothing but heartbreak. Dude already knows that. Liu Tongyi, if I were to truly revolt and failed, there would be no shame in dying by his hands. If I won, given his temperament, my heart, my lungs, my spleen all squeezed together and trembled. I thought no further. Yun Yu calmly spoke the phrase I had never wanted to saddle myself with, never wished to think beyond. Victory or death. I only heaved a silent sigh. How fortunate that I was only a spy. The next day, I finally had a day to myself. No summons arrived from the palace, and no visitors came to call. There's a quirk people sometimes have. When one is busy, one can never seem to get enough sleep. When the time comes to get out of bed, even as the servants have gone to bring washing water, one wants to snatch those moments to fall back into bed and lounge a little longer. But when I finally have a day with nothing to do and no one to disturb my pleasant dreams, I lay in bed, tossing and turning, and before it was even noon, I couldn't sleep any more and got up on my own. After I ate, I turned circles around the central hall on my own as an aid to digestion. I was a little lonely, so I changed into casual clothes and headed to a place where pleasure could be found. Houses and alleys in the capital where people with my interests could go weren't in short supply, but few places catered to my rather uncommon tastes. Usually others liked the younger ones, with tender voices and youthful rounded faces. The age I preferred was a little older, but usually few of those were virgins. Actually, I don't care about virginity, but those who weren't virgins, unless they were of great renown, did not dare keep me company. Perhaps because rumor made me out to be ultimately hard to please, and I was helpless before this. I didn't believe myself to be a fussy person. Perhaps I was a little picky about appearances. In the whole capital, only a very few could be the cream of the crop, so even in frequenting brothels, I was lonelier than others. I came to Twilight House, where I played Weki and drank some cups of tea with Chu Shun. Chu Shun was a person I had gone to fairly often in the last year or two. He was handsome, skilled at conversation, even-tempered, and always capable of saying just the right thing at the right time. and never saying what ought not to be said. Even at court, these accomplishments would have made him somebody. Well, I already thought well of Chu Shun. Today, probably because I was a little lonely, I found him a particularly rare marvel. Holding Chu Shun in bed, I found him increasingly to my liking. I brushed his hair, still slightly damp with fresh sweat, off his forehead and said, half sincerely and half teasingly, "Why don't you come home with me?" Chu Shun laughed. His voice was still a little languid. "I thought your highness never took anyone home." "That was before," I said, "and it was never a rule." I sat halfway up and looked at him. "Come back with me." Chu Shun raised himself up on one hand and picked up his inner robe to drape it over himself. "All right." Then I really did take Chu Shun with me. After so many years frequenting pleasure houses, this was my first time bringing someone home. When I thought of this, I suddenly felt a trifle bitter. It was afternoon still, with time to go out till evening. I hadn't wanted to make too much of a spectacle coming to Twilight House, so I had taken a small sedan. When I had Chu Shun with me on the way back, it felt a little cramped. Some crowding isn't a bad thing, it has its appeal. Chu Shun sat next to me. He had come with me right after finishing his bath. When the sedan shook slightly, his fresh aroma wafted my way. With such a person at my side, to touch if I raised my hand, to embrace if I so wished, to answer when I spoke, I felt more present, no longer detached in the way that I had felt from last night into this morning. I took Chu Shun's hand and was just about to do something else when the sedan shook and came to a stop. I waited briefly, then said, "What's wrong?" An attendant, keeping pace with the sedan, responded, "I regret to inform your highness that the road ahead is blocked. I do not know why and have already sent someone to investigate. Dude was just trying to be subtle, and now it's going to be a spectacle." The person he had sent returned shortly. "Imperial Chancellor Lu's official sedan is stopped ahead. It seems someone has lodged a complaint of injustice and has held up Chancellor Lu's sedan, bringing the whole street to a standstill." Guy can't catch a break, man. I pushed aside the sedan's curtain at once. What a thing to happen. I will go take a look. This busy and prosperous street was quite a wide road for the capital. Many court officials had taken it on their way to and from court, and when the emperor occasionally accompanied the empress dowager out of the palace to light incense and pray to the Buddha at the temple, they often passed this way as well, precisely because the road was spacious. There was more than enough room for the emperor and the empress dowager's honor guards put together to spread without crowding. But when I left the sedan, I saw up ahead an impenetrable sea of heads, young and old, male and female, all ordinary citizens. The whole street was hopelessly blocked, leaving no room for even a single droplet of water to squeeze by. The crowd buzzed with commentary, which mingled with the orders from the Imperial Chancellor's guards for the spectators to step back from the sedan. Rising above it all were heart-rending cries like the voices of those demanding justice. I moved through the crowd. Some guards from my manor went on ahead crying, "His Highness Prince Huai passes! Everyone make way!" The noise of the spectators quieted considerably, and they parted to make way. I continued forward and saw Liu Tongyi standing in front of his official sedan. In an open space directly in front of him knelt a few unkempt, ragged people of mixed gender, crying up to heaven and earth, bitterly proclaiming their grievance. "Chancellor Liu, my whole family is 5 souls, and we've all been dreadfully wronged. My old father remains in prison to this day, clinging to life by a thread. Please, Chancellor, take it upon yourself to investigate this injustice. Xian Shou's magistrate has no regard for human life. This transgresses against heaven's law." Their leader crawled a few steps forward and raised a rolled-up object high above his head. Chancellor, this is my complaint. Please take it and give justice for my family. His forehead was bleeding where he had struck it against the ground while genuflecting. Blood streamed down his filthy face, and the roll of white cloth in his raised hand was dotted with red. It must have been a declaration written in blood. Could not help saying, every day at 3 marks past the hour of the monkey, the sedan of Chamberlain Xiangping of the Court of Judicial Review passes through Xingshou's street. Rather than bringing your grievance here to Imperial Chancellor Liu, you would be better served by getting up and going to Xingshou Street to stop Shangping's official sedan. The man raised his head, trembling. Liu Tongyi turned slightly and bowed. Your Highness. No need for such formality, Chancellor Liu, I said hastily. I was only passing by and came to have a look out of curiosity. I walked over and stood beside Liu Tongyi, who said to the man, What His Highness says is the truth. Rather than present your suit to me, you would be better off going to the Court of Judicial Review. I now know the outlines of your complaint. Once the Court of Judicial Review has accepted the case, I will keep my eye on it and urge the Ministry of Justice and the Court of Judicial Review to try it conscientiously. The man's eyes instantly became more doleful, and he said, sharply, Imperial Chancellor Liu, can you really stand by and do nothing in the face of such injustice? Are you planning to fob us off and watch as His Majesty's subjects in this empire of law and order are subject to the coercion of corrupt officials? Will you allow filthy officials to treat human lives like trash? It is not fobbing you off to tell you to go to the Court of Judicial Review, I said. You ought to know that the court must proceed according to rules and regulations. Imperial Chancellor Liu undertakes a portion of the nation's rule for His Majesty. While the Ministry of Justice and the Court of Judicial Review fall within his purview, he has only a supervisory role. He does not normally investigate cases himself. If Imperial Chancellor Liu were to accept your complaint now, it could only be conveyed to the Ministry of Justice tomorrow after court assembly, then transferred by the Chancellor's office to the Court of Judicial Review for investigation. It would have to pass through the hands of numerous officials on the way, and perhaps 2 or 3 commentaries would be appended to it, and several official seals affixed. At the earliest, your case would only be filed and prepared for trial by the Court of Judicial Review the day after tomorrow, or even the day after that. You say your father is in prison now, hanging by a thread. A single day's delay poses a danger to him. Go now, before the hour of the monkey begins, and hurry to Xingshou Street to stop Lord Shang. He will accept your complaint. Imperial Chancellor Liu will say a word about this case to the Ministry of Justice and the Court of Judicial Review, and by tomorrow afternoon at the latest, the Court of Judicial Review will begin investigating this injustice. The man looked blankly at me and Liu Tongyi. After a moment, he returned to kowtowing fervently. Thank you for your advice. I will never forget this immense favor. He raised his head slightly, looking at me in gratitude, and said, I heard Chancellor Liu call this honorable gentleman Highness. May I ask which prince His Highness is? What was he doing here lingering to ask about my title instead of hurrying off right away to hail Shangping's sedan? This is His Highness Prince Huai, said Liu Tongyi. The man gave me another blank stare. His eyes flashed, and he kowtowed fervently again. Thank you, Your Highness Prince Huai, thank you. The 2 people behind him also kowtowed. But after kowtowing, he still didn't go. He crawled another 2 paces forward and raised the bloody declaration. I will go at once to Xingshou Street then, but please take a look at my complaint, Chancellor. I beg of you to help me get justice. Liu Tongyi nodded and said, Very well. He stepped forward. I suddenly felt suspicious. I had seen quite a few people lodge complaints of injustice. Reasonably speaking, the injustice in this case must be considerable. The people bringing the complaint were wailing quite mournfully. Despite this, they seemed a little too composed. Rather than rushing at once to Xingshou Street, they were dawdling here as if they weren't worried about missing their chance to stop Shang Ping. Could they think that because Imperial Chancellor Liu and I already knew about this case, the verdict was sure to be reversed? Yu Tongyi had already been to take the bloody declaration, while the man still knelt with his head bowed. Imperial Chancellor Liu, I always thought that you were an honest chancellor like Lord Liu in the past, a good official. The hand holding up the bloody declaration darted. I sensed danger and threw myself forward without thinking. I grabbed hold of Liu Tongyi and cried, "Rancy, get back!" In a flash, a cold gleam took aim at the left side of Liu Tongyi's chest. I only had time to reach out and shield him. A chill instantly penetrated my clothing and punctured my right arm. Immediate chaos erupted around us. I felt nothing. I had Liu Tongyi carefully shielded, but I did not know whether he had been injured. I asked over and over, "Rancy, are you hurt? Are you in pain?" Liu Tongyi didn't answer me. He put a hand on my right arm. "His Highness has taken an injury to his arm. Someone come and bandage it. Quick! Fetch a doctor." There was tumult all around. I kept hold of him and said, "Rancy, for pity's sake, are you hurt?" A parcel of blue in my arm stirred. With a soft sigh, he said, "Your Highness, I am unharmed." At Liu Tongyi's movement, along with his answer, I slowly came to myself. In coming to myself, I immediately noticed the impropriety of the situation. Liu Tongyi and I were so close together. I had come very close to shield him, and he now had a hand on my right arm. It was as if the two of us were openly embracing in full public view. When I became aware of this, I felt weak from filthy, giddy joy. Then I let go and stepped back. The servants from my manor were uncommonly adaptable and circumspect. Only now did they come to support me from either side, and Liu Tongyi removed his hand from my right arm. I looked at him closely. Though his expression was calm, there was something troubled in it. Well, in the heat of the moment, I had inadvertently called him Rancy a number of times. I wonder how he felt about it. The three who had been delivering their grievances were already bound and lay prone on the ground. My attendants had tied their arms behind their backs, though their leader threshed and shouted, "Liu Tongyi, you collude with the treacherous Prince Huai. You are a disgrace to the name of Liu. You dishonor your family." Ridiculous. I eyed him and said, "I don't take this road every day. I just happened to be passing by. Were you really able to foresee this and prepare a knife in advance to lie in wait?" The assassin thrashed again, but said nothing. "There is no need to go on pretending," I said. "There will be people waiting in the courtroom of the Ministry of Justice to hear whose orders you were acting on and why you tried to assassinate Imperial Chancellor Liu." I raised my left hand towards the guards. "Take them away." Supporting me, one of my circumspect servants said at once, "Your Highness is so wise. How could these nobodies make mischief in front of you?" "How could I receive such flattery in front of Chancellor Liu?" I said, modestly smiling. "It puts me to shame." We're getting there, friends. Liu Tongyi sighed softly. "Your Highness should return home as soon as possible to have your wound treated. Do not linger here joking with me. It was my carelessness that caused this." "I am imperiled," I interrupted him. "Chancellor Liu, if you really want to thank me, don't talk like that." I never imagined I would have a chance to hold Liu Tongyi in my arms. Now that I had lived to see the day, I thought it would be worth being stabbed another 3 or 4 times. Dude's got it bad. Liu Tongyi looked at me, and I looked back into his clear eyes. For a moment, there was an emotion in my heart that defied description. I smiled and said, "But Chancellor Liu, I think you must have been a little muddled from shock. The dagger still in my flesh, you called for the wound to be bandaged. It can't be bandaged yet, you know." A trace of a smile finally appeared in Liu Tongyi's face. "That's called losing your wits. I wasn't just muddled, I was completely silly." Some of my servants had already gone ahead to call for an imperial physician, and the remaining ones supported me until I reached my sedan. Liu Tongyi. Oh. Liu Tongyi kept pace with me. At the sedan, I said, "You ought to go home and rest, Chancellor Liu. I am all right. The dagger is short and only went through flesh. See, I can still move my forearm and hand. Once I am home, the doctor will pull it out, apply some salve, and bandage it. I figure it will be good as new within 10 days. A mere flesh wound." Liu Tongyi looked at my blood-soaked sleeve and frowned. "Now your highness is just being polite. No matter what, I would insist. That is, I would like to accompany your highness to High Manor. There can be no delay. Please get into the sedan now." Oh no! Oh no! Oh. I was just about to nod and agree when an attendant moved aside the sedan curtain, and Liu Tongyi's gaze fell upon the sedan's interior. I stood there and watched as Liu Tongyi, his expression unperturbed, lowered his eyes. "You fumbled it, my man! You fumbled it!" "Oh, Chancellor Liu, Liu Tongyi lifted his sleeve. "Although, with your highness injured, it is inappropriate for an outsider to be present and get in the way. I will bid farewell as requested. Hurry home, your highness." "Oh, you fumbled it, man!" All I could do was nod stiffly. "Well, then I'll be going. Go home and rest as well, Chancellor Liu." A cool breeze opened a gap in the sedan's curtain. Through the gap, I watched Liu Tongyi's official sedan disappear down another road. I feel the same, Peacock Pages. No! Oh! This really was my first time bringing someone home from a pleasure house. In the cool breeze, I was despondent. Oh, dude. You really can't catch a break. Not long after my return to the manor, the imperial physician arrived, and another person, a very problematic one, came with him. I hadn't expected him to come. What's more, he arrived without fanfare. I just caught my breath and was half reclining on a couch in an interior parlor, sipping tea from a cup held by Chu Shun to wet my throat. As I suffered from the terrible pain in my arm, out of the corner of my eye, I caught a glimpse of the attendants at the door, all falling to their knees. Flash of bright yellow appeared behind the threshold. He just told His Majesty he didn't bring home anybody, and now he brought home. I automatically gave a start and rolled off the couch. I tried to land in a kneeling posture and nearly knocked the teacup out of Chu Shun's hand, straining my back in the process. Respectful greetings to your majesty." The bright yellow crossed the threshold. "Rise, Imperial Uncle. How can you kneel when you are so gravely injured?" I was just about to kowtow in gratitude when a hand fell on my shoulder. I had no choice but to get up. "This is too great an honor," I said. Chizi looked at me with a deeply troubled gaze. His hand was still on my left shoulder. "Imperial Uncle, there is no need to be so formal with us." His eyes ever so naturally wandered over to Chu Shun, who was still on the ground. "This is..." While I considered what introduction would be appropriate, Chu Shun touched his head to the ground and said, "I am called Chu Shun. My humble greetings to your eternal majesty." With an understanding gaze, Qin Shi said, "Oh, you may stand as well." He looked again at Chu Shun, who had risen. "Young Master Chu Shun of Twilight House, we have long heard your name spoken. It seems now that you are indeed an uncommon personage." Chu Shun bowed. "My thanks for your eternal majesty's praise." She smiled, but he looked at me. "All of our imperial uncle's people are extraordinary." The dagger was stuck in my right arm, growing more painful by the moment. My nephew, the emperor, at last showed compassion for my infirmity. drew his brows together and said to the people behind him, "Where is Imperial Physician Shu? Why the delay? Come and attend to our Imperial Uncle's wound." "Nephew, the delay was your own doing. How could Imperial Physician Shu dare to come forward? How could you blame him?" Imperial Physician Shu gave a trembling answer and tottered forward with his medicine chest. My nephew, the Emperor, at last removed his hand from my shoulder, and half a dozen of Imperial Physician Shu's subordinate medical officers crowded around. I was pressed into a chair beside a table and watched as vials, jars, knives, scissors, bandages, trays, and so on were arranged upon the table. Imperial Physician Shu leaned forward, narrowed his eyes, and studied my right arm for a long time. Looking gravely at the dagger sticking out of my flesh, he said, "The dagger in your Highness Prince Huai's arm must be pulled out." I expected it to be pulled. Any idiot would know this. Was I expected to leave it there, to sprout leaves in the spring, bloom in the summer, and yield a few jin of little daggers in the fall? An Imperial Physician Shu was the head of the Imperial Academy of Medicine. Became seriously concerned for my nephew the Emperor's precious health. Imperial Physician Shu even sounded as though he was asking for instructions. Dude's nervous. Come on. But it wasn't me he was asking. Here and now, it wasn't up to me to say whether he should pull it out or not. Chizi sat in the seat of honor and proclaimed, "Official Shu, go ahead and pull it out." Upon receiving this imperial edict, Imperial Physician Shu at last rolled up his sleeves, had two of his subordinates tie a white mask over his mouth, stood ready to pull out the knife. I guess, yeah, with blood splatters. He raised a small pair of scissors glinting silver and then said to me, "Your Highness Prince Huai, I will now begin extracting the dagger." I was exasperated. I could only say, "Please, go ahead." Imperial Physician Shu held the scissors in one hand, but still did not use them. "Your Highness, there will be some pain while I remove the dagger. You may feel better if you do something to distract yourself a little. For example, talk to someone." "Focus on pulling out the dagger, Official Shu," said Chizi. "We will talk with our Imperial Uncle." Through the pain, I had to force a smile and say, "Thank you, Your Majesty." Imperial Physician Shu began cutting my sleeve away. I continued, "It truly distresses me that this trifling affair today should have occupied Your Majesty's attention." "Trifling," said Chizi. "You were so gravely injured, Imperial Uncle. It's a major affair. It's only proper for us to come in person." The fabric around the dagger was stuck to the skin by dried blood. As it peeled away, I felt a searing pain. I said, "Your Majesty overstates it. It was only a flesh wound. The fabric must all have been removed." Imperial Physician Shu pressed on the skin around the dagger. With a smile hovering over his lips, Chizi said, "You are too modest, Imperial Uncle. You are a pillar of the court. After your carousing today, you left the pleasure house to carry your beauty home. On your way, you boldly defended Imperial Chancellor Liu from a dagger. There is no one to rival your wisdom, courage, or appetite." Oh, that's a dig you didn't have to put in there. The dagger in my flesh shifted. I clenched my teeth and gasped. "It was coincidence, Your Majesty. Believe those assassins were sent by someone. They must be investigated." Chizi half closed his eyes. "Fine. We will leave it to the Court of Judicial Review to handle. We've always felt comfortable leaving cases with Shangping." He raised his eyes again to look at me. "Official Liu hasn't come to visit you yet, Imperial Uncle?" "Chancellor Liu also received a shock," I said flatly. "I asked him to go home to rest." "Yes, it is gratifying to us that Official Liu was not injured," Chizi said. He looked at me again. "We have heard that after being stabbed, heedless of your own condition, you only held Official Liu and asked, 'Rancy, are you hurt?' You are so intimate and friendly with this court's official, Imperial Uncle. The whole court is one big happy family. This is immensely gratifying to us." Man, people need to stop snitching. I suppressed a shudder. The wound in my arm was suddenly vacant. Imperial Physician Shu had finally pulled the dagger out. Imperial Physician Shu and his subordinates clustered around my injured arm and made use of all the vials, jars, bandages, and bowls that they had brought. They applied pressure and stopped the bleeding, cleaned the wound, drizzled this and that powder and concoction, and finally wrapped it in bandages. I let them fiddle. I was reminded of the dish called Sai Wai Jiangnan, fertile fields abroad. The front leg of a sheep would be wrapped in lotus leaves, just like my arm now. When eaten, the lotus leaves were unwrapped, and it was sprinkled with spiced salt and dipped in a mixture of soy sauce and vinegar. That actually sounds really good. As Imperial Physician Shu bandaged, he said, "Your Highness Prince Huai's diet should be light for the next few days. Avoid spicy or stimulating foods." I would bear that in mind. Imperial Physician Shu delivered a clear explanation of all the vials and jars as he presented them to me, and they were taken away by Chief Steward Xiao and others acting under his instructions. Slightly later, he prescribed a medicine to be taken orally. Chu Shun had stood by without a sound all along. While Chief Steward Xiao was collecting the pile of vessels, Imperial Physician Shu handed over the prescription, and Chu Shun took it. Imperial Physician Shu looked at him, looked at me, then said, "Please maintain your energy in the near future, Your Highness Prince Huai, and eschew strenuous activity." Smiling, I said, "I have always enjoyed idleness. I will be sure to abide by Imperial Physician Shu's injunctions." My nephew, the Emperor, smiled as well. Official Shu is too cautious. Our Imperial Uncle always knows his limits. Ominous. Imperial Physician Shu's beard quivered, and he cupped his hands in salute. "I have overstepped. My apologies, Your Highness." "It's nothing," I said. "I will show my thanks in the future for importuning you this half-day." Imperial Physician Shu and his subordinates genuflected and took their leave. Chief Steward Xiao and Shu Shun also withdrew with the prescription and the bottles. I said to Chizzy, "I am astonished that my trifling flesh wound resulted in an imperial visitation. Your Majesty's benevolence is boundless. I am moved to tears of gratitude. But it grows late. The hours have advanced. Please hurry back to the palace, Your Majesty." Chizzy rose and eyed my bandaged arm. "We have given you many occasions to be distressed and moved to tears of gratitude these last few days, Imperial Uncle. Between us, as uncle and nephew, there is no need to hew so closely to the conventional formalities between ruler and subject. Your rescuing Imperial Chancellor Liu today does you credit, Imperial Uncle, and we will remember it. But there are some cautions we must pass on to you." I bowed. Chizzy took 2 steps and with a soft sigh quietly said, "Court officials of the 5th rank and above may not visit brothels and pleasure houses. We are aware that hardly anyone at court abides by these strictures, but you occupy a special position, Imperial Uncle. You have all the officials watching you from below. At any rate, you shouldn't be too public about it." I had known the issue of Chu Shun would cause trouble, and I immediately said, "I have spent years violating court discipline by wallowing in places of ill repute, tarnishing the court's stainless reputation. This is an unpardonable offense. I can only ask your Highness's forgiveness. The reason I have continued to err while knowing I did wrong is that I left bitterly, that I wanted, just for a moment, to have someone in my bed I could talk to. I am always idle and make no contributions to the court. It always causes me shame, and on top of that, my interests being what they are, it's truly..." Chizzy stood before me, his bright yellow hems not stirring a sliver. A moment later, I heard him sigh again. "This is conduct befitting of you, Imperial Uncle. Even in frequenting a brothel, there is such loyalty and righteousness in your heart, such patriotism. After romancing, carousing, embracing a brothel boy and bringing him home, still you have a belly full of grievance and a heart full of loneliness. What are we to do?" My legs bent at once. I do not dare. Before I could kneel fully, Chizzy put a hand on my shoulder. Imperial Uncle, we were only joking. Were you? Were you? His brow was still furrowed, but a trace of a smile played over his lips. He withdrew his hand in no great hurry. As you rescued Chancellor Liu today, your visit to the brothel was indeed patriotic. My expression slipped slightly from shame, and I simply bowed my head and made no response. Neither did Chizzy speak. For consummate silence, I finally said, Your Majesty, it really is late now. You ought to return to the palace. Chizzy made a noise of assent. I tried and tried to hold back, but in the end I could not help adding, There is also something I must say to you, Your Majesty. Your Majesty occupies a preeminent position and ought to take tender care of your precious health. Handling affairs of state daily is a tax on your mind and your strength, and some extraneous and unimportant matters, for example, my injuries or family tragedies, ought not to hold too much of your attention. Chizzy cut me off with a smile. It would seem you do not like us meddling in your affairs, Imperial Uncle. I was confounded. So you see, it is hard work being a treacherous minister, and even worse for a loyal minister. Might give a few words of earnest and conscientious counsel, yet have untold layers of meaning read into them, uncounted evil intentions ascribed to me. No such thought crossed my mind, I had to say. It was an honest remonstrance. Selfishly, I could ask for nothing better than to be the recipient of your Majesty's tender concern. But out of consideration for your Majesty's well-being, I must make so bold as to speak directly. When your Majesty leaves the palace, you ought to take even greater care for your safety, as, for example, when proceeding to my residence. Mere smattering of guards, supposing I really was a malicious usurper. Chizzy looked at me, his eyes and his expression both somewhat unreadable. I looked directly at him with loyalty and righteousness. Shortly, Chizzy turned around and said indifferently, Your labors are understood by us, Imperial Uncle. We will take care in the future. He shot me another glance. That being the case, we will return to the palace. You will be at home recuperating from your wound for some days, and will have no need to go to the palace. In a few days, we will send someone to look in on you. I knelt in gratitude for the great kindness, and at last respectfully saw my nephew the Emperor out. Once His Majesty had left by the main gate, I once again felt a throbbing, burning pain from my wound, and was somewhat exhausted. I returned to the parlor and rested on the couch. Chengjun brought a cup of warm tea, and I pulled him down to sit next to me. Chengjun said, Your Highness has been injured and is greatly fatigued. Why don't I go now, so as to not cause any inconvenience or disrupt your Highness's recovery? I took the teacup, drank, and said with a smile, Even you won't stay with me. Fine. Have Chief Steward Xiao arrange for a sedan to take you back then. Chengjun took the teacup from my hand. When your Highness puts it like that, how could I dare leave? Beside us, Chief Steward Xiao said, Then I will have a bedroom prepared for young Master Chu, I answered. No need. Chief Steward Xiao said at once, Understood. Chengjun rose. I'm sorry for troubling Chief Steward Xiao. His manner was humble and natural. Chief Steward Xiao looked up at him and said smilingly, No trouble at all. Chengjun came back to sit beside me. I chatted with him for a while. He came from a family of officials, and he had been around quite a bit and had many experiences. He could speak on almost any subject. Each time I spoke with him, I felt easier. Holding Chengjun by the sleeve, I said, What a pity I forgot that there is no zither in the manor. I have to wait until tomorrow to have one brought here. Otherwise, I would ask you to play for me tonight. Chengjun said, Does your Highness want me to play out of concern that the pain from your wound will not let you sleep well? I made a face and said, Do you truly think me so insensible to music? When have I ever dared to treat your playing as a lullaby, young Master Chu? Smiling, Chengjun said, I'm only afraid that if I play a lullaby, your Highness will only grow more energized by listening to it. That's all to the good, I said seriously. Imperial Physician Shu said just now that I will need my energy. Shushun tittered. I reached out to embrace him with my uninjured left arm. Not long after, dinner was ready. In accordance with Imperial Physician Shu's strictures, the fare was light and bland, a bowl of plain porridge and 7 or 8 small side dishes. When I had just lifted my bowl of porridge and Shushun was serving me some cold fiddleheads in sauce, a servant said from the door, "Your Highness, Imperial Chancellor Liu and Supervisor Yoon have arrived." Can't this guy just get a break today? My heart missed a beat. I hastily put down my bowl. Invite them in. My heart missed a beat. Nope, I just literally read that. Soon after, a glimmer of pale green and a set of brocade robes appeared together at the door. I came forward. Chancellor Liu, Supervisor Yoon. With a bright smile, Yoon said, "Oh, we've come at a bad time. I smell food. Chancellor Liu, we've arrived during His Highness Prince Huai's dinner." "You're just in time," I said. "The food has just been served, and we've yet to start eating. If Chancellor Liu and Supervisor Yoon do not object, come and eat with me. I'm afraid there's only plain porridge and pickled vegetables, nothing suitable for entertaining you gentlemen." It was Yoon who smiled and shook his head. "What a pity. I ate before coming, and I think Chancellor Liu was eaten as well. I heard that your Highness was injured and came to visit. I just happened to run into Chancellor Liu at the gate." I looked at Liu Tongyi. Perhaps it was the surpassing softness of the night, the dimness of the lamplight. I thought he was looking at me with an expression unlike his usual one. When he spoke, his voice permeated my heart like the gentle evening breeze. "How is your injury, your Highness?" In spite of myself, my voice also softened like the night. "It's nothing serious. The Imperial physician said it would heal in a few days. Chancellor Liu, please, don't worry." Yoon put in, "Since your Highness is waiting to eat, I will take... It would be inhospitable to send guests away who have come to visit the infirmed." I said, "Supervisor Yoon and Chancellor Liu, please sit." Alright, I know we're almost done, but my throat is killing me. Hang on. This is like a comedy of errors. I called for tea. Yoon sipped at his, looking around. "I hear that your Highness brought back Chun-Yu." It was Supervisor Yoon's whimsical affection to bring up a thing best left unmentioned at a critical moment like this. I gave a cough and said, "Yes." Liu Tongyi was drinking tea, staying out of it. "Oh, then where is he?" said Yoon. "I lost to him last time we played Wiki, and it bothered me ever since. If your Highness will lend me a quiet spot, I'll play him again." Then he put down his teacup and rose. "Your Highness and Chancellor Liu can chat." Maybe less of a... Anyway, he followed Chief Steward Xiao behind the screen to go see Chun-Yu. Only myself and Liu Tongyi remained, seated across from each other. I suddenly felt a little awkward. Liu Tongyi coming to Wai Manor was a groundbreaking event, and I, like a boy of 17, had no idea what to do with myself. It was Liu Tongyi who spoke first, to express his gratitude, merely thanking me for saving him, with an added expression of regret that I had been injured. "It's nothing," I said. "I just happened to be passing by. It was all coincidence. Have the assassins been taken to the Ministry of Justice's prison already?" Liu Tongyi nodded, and I continued. "I wonder who sent them. Have you offended anyone recently, Chancellor Liu?" "Could say that I haven't, and you could say that I've offended too many," Liu Tongyi said. "I can't think of anyone right now." This was the unvarnished truth. At court, there was never any knowing for sure whether one had offended somebody or who that offended someone was. So I changed the subject. "At any rate, you ought to be more cautious for now, Chancellor Liu. How fortunate that those assassins were novices with no great accuracy or strength, and that they hadn't poisoned the dagger or else. Guilt crept again. Guilt once again crept into Liu Tongyi's eyes, and I hastily said, Of course, I don't say this to indebt you, Chancellor Liu. I added, Chancellor Liu, in the heat of the moment today, I inadvertently called your name and somewhat overstepped the bounds of propriety. I hope you can make allowances. Liu Tongyi looked at me and did not respond. I went on, because of my reputation and certain predilections, today's actions might impact your unsullied reputation. I hope you will. Liu Tongyi was still looking at me. I have heard that your highness has never cared about idle gossip. Why such reserve now? Your highness rescued me this afternoon, and your highness has said that all your actions were taken inadvertently in the heat of the moment, blameless and proper. If your highness turns around and apologizes to me, I won't know how to take it. Oh, Rancy. The point is, when I held you, there was nothing blameless about it. I did have something else in mind. Liu Tongyi smiled faintly. Besides, in official circles, who can truly be unstained? To cling to one's reputation is to take on a meaningless burden, nothing more. I have always thought so, I said. You speak to my heart there, Chancellor Liu. But I never thought you would say such a thing to me. Those clear eyes regarded me again. I was all but struck motionless. I said, thought you would have in mind affairs of state, affairs of the people, that if you even spoke to a person like me, it would be an attempt to instill higher values. Liu Tongyi smiled again. Your highness always leaves me speechless. I was taken aback, not knowing what he meant, so I said, smiling, Oh yes, this is your first time at Huai Manor. Well, it is late. If you do not object, I can take you to have a look around. Huai Manor, of course, cannot equal your residence for tranquility, but the back garden is tolerable enough and quite serene at night. But Liu Tongyi rose. It is getting late. I will not bother you any further. If your highness thinks it's convenient, I can come by to visit regularly for a few days, and next time I will ask your highness to acquaint me with the manor's gardens. I rose as well. His come by to visit regularly for a few days had brought a warm glow to my heart. I said, Then I will see you off. When I had seen him to the corridor, Liu Tongyi said, Your highness, please return to your meal. I have delayed you long enough. Your food will grow cold. Cold food can be heated, I said. We'll take you a little further. Thinking this was a little forthright, I added, After all, this is your first time here. Liu Tongyi turned in the dim light. Your highness, this is not my first visit. I was again taken aback. Liu Tongyi seemed to smile again. For your late mother's birthday celebration, I came with my mother to congratulate her. We only sat a while, then departed. We did not stay for the banquet. Your highness was busy then, and perhaps did not notice. The moonlight was like water, and his eyes were very bright. I could not help saying with a sigh, What a pity. Liu Tongyi's smile deepened. It is a pity. I hadn't been able to find a full edition of the divine white jade sword. Meant to ask your highness whether you had one here. The moon of the past, the stars of the past, the pond of the past, the osmanthus flowers of the past. When he spoke of that place, they took the place of the present scene and surroundings. But I did not know whether the person standing before me was still that youth. When Liu Tongyi was gone, I returned to the dining hall. For some reason, everything in here and now felt a little false. Too good, too coincidental, too convenient. None of it seemed real. It was only when I was held up outside the dining hall by a certain person and heard him say certain words that I felt a shock of reality. With no one around, Yu gently tugged on my sleeve. He laughed softly and just said as softly, "Was your Highness pleased with my gift?" The suspicion caught in my mind was at last substantiated. I might have known. I could only sigh. In a voice even lower than his, I asked Supervisor Yoon, "Is it your idea of a gift to get me stabbed?" I don't like him. I really don't like Yoon Yoon. He just feels slimy. And by the way, that's the end of the chapter, but I'm just like, I really don't like him. By the way, I realized like halfway through that I never did my I do not own this. I don't own any rights to this. The only thing I own is the physical copy in front of me and my time. So please don't sue me. I'm doing this just for the heck of it, just for fun. Yeah, something is definitely off about him. I agree, Chichi Kiki. So yeah. Also forgot to say that this is a chill stream, which you probably have found out by now. If it's not your flavor, that's all good. Maybe stay and see if it is. I mean, if you've gotten to this point, maybe it is now. But yeah, we're just here chilling, reading. So for Thursday, we will be doing 2 chapters, I think. So we will be doing 4 and 5 on Thursday. Because these chapters are a lot longer, as you've noticed, than our other chapters were in Golden Terrace. So there's only 12 actual chapters and then 4 extras in this book. So we're going to just chip away at it. Chapter 3 was just a really long chapter, so I was like, we're just going to do a single one because it's already been like 2.5 hours. So yeah, we'll do 2 chapters because I think it's about this length. Yeah. Oh, that's going to be another long one, but no. There's no real good way to split that. And then it looks like Tuesday might be a bit shorter. Unless I can figure something out. We'll see. As of right now, we'll do 2 chapters. So. But yeah, I thought that was a very interesting chapter. We had some progress with potentially a relationship between what seems to be our 2 main characters. Liu Tongyi and her buddy, Prince Huai. So I'm excited to see where it goes. I have a feeling the beginning of the next chapter will probably be at the meeting, or at least like, hey, not cool that you had someone arrange to either stab Chancellor Liu or just frame it that way. But I think we'll probably get to that meeting, the clandestine meeting, in the next chapter, in the next thing. So it'll be our normal Thursday, 8:00 Central Standard Time. And I will have my new tattoo, which I will be very excited to show off. It will probably be in second skin unless it bleeds through. Just because it keeps it cleaner for a little longer while it has time to heal. But yeah. Oh, I'm so glad you were able to stay and listen tonight, Peacock Pages. And thank you for thanking me for the reading tonight. I appreciate you being here. I appreciate all of you being here and everybody else that's listening later. I'm doing this just for the heck of it, and also just to get some of these books out there because you really can't find them anymore. Or you pay an arm and a leg for them. So I'm glad you enjoyed. I hope you can join us some more. I know life and kids and all that doesn't always happen, but I was really happy that you were here tonight. It's always fun chatting back and forth. All right. On that note, I hope you all have a lovely rest of your night and have a great day tomorrow. I will hopefully see some of you on Thursday. I have to find where my button is. There it is. Good night.